for the few people in attendance and the dozens who are listening all around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, from his spare bedroom in Norfolk, England, Mark Laws asks you to get ready to fight fucking Monday!
Right, you good to go?
Rock and roll, mate.
Happy days. Steve, welcome to the TFIM show. How are you feeling?
I'm good, mate, considering I have a new eye.
A new eye. one new eye, one robotic one, and one slightly more dodgy one.
I kid you not. So I at the grand age of 47, which the surgeon said is pretty young. But as I said, you know, someone wins a lottery and it's not always money. What it is beyond 40, you get a breakdown of the proteins, and think of a dirty window.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're struggling to see. And I noticed it. I mean, ironically, looking at a laptop screen, your little arrow, you know, the cursor. I was like, what's going on here? And I said, you know, Predator, the shoulder cannon.
Yeah.
So I closed that eye and I'm like, there's 3 of them bloody things. There's literally 3. So I almost had, I liken it to a 3D movie, but without the glasses.
Yeah.
So everything was overlapped. And I mean, fast forward to a few months back, it got so bad that literally 6 feet in front of me, I couldn't see my kids' faces.
Jeez.
So, you know, if you were to think of text with the eye test, it was just, you know, think of, you know, like the graffiti where you get someone that goes over someone else's and before you know it, you've got like 6 overlays and it's an absolute mess. I knew how bad it was when I was looking at a traffic light, and it actually became a clock face. So you've got the red light, and out of this eye, you've got a big circle with red. So it's about 6 or 7 of the buggers. That's how bad this eye was.
Jesus.
And if I pulled text really close, I could literally, you know, read. And this one was really good at about 18 inches. And then I thought, hold up. What on earth is my brain doing with this much, for those of you on the video, with this much of a differential? Mate, I was walking into door frames on a regular basis. I was knocking tea and coffee over. I was going to grab stuff and missing. I couldn't even undo the little lollipops for the kids. Shoelaces, they would take several goes for me to get it, you know. And I thought, wow, this is fucking scary, mate.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How you take so many things for granted, like
100%.
just every day, do your laces up, open some sweets for the kids, don't twat yourself on the door as you walk through into the next room. Like,
Yeah.
simple things that you don't even think about, and then all of a sudden, if something's going on to make your to make your brain have to think about it too much, almost, you got two different conflicting messages going into it.
Yeah, and that's what the specialist said. She completely got it. I mean, you know, wind the clock back years ago, I actually studied visual perception at my psychology degree. And the way the brain works is it can only go on sensory feedback in terms of survival, movement, proprioception, awareness. And I said, oh, am I right in thinking that there's actually a tug of war going on with a part of my brain that knows that the info coming in is wrong, but then a part of the brain saying, well, look, this is the info, deal with it? She went, yeah. So that's probably why you're knackered, why you're struggling.
Or it could have been like your brain is in Westminster, and this side are saying this is right, and that side is saying no, you're full of shit, this is right. And then you just go around in circles with everyone thinking that their way is the right way, rather than going, hang on a minute, there's fucking a problem here. Although
mine didn't last for about 200 years, so I consider that a bonus. You know, we're going to have fun today. We're going to go there, mate. We are going to go there, unplugged and absolutely vulnerable. I mean, you're a bloody good guy, mate. You're one of the top on my list, and I think the way I'll add value today is being absolutely transparent, to the extent where some people might go, that's a bit much. But mate, I've been there, I've done it, I've got nothing to hide. I've been at the top of the hill and I've crash landed and smashed myself to bits at the bottom, and I'm here to tell that story simply because, you know, the eye was one thing. The eye was actually a minor thing. I mean, if you want to speed through the list of, I changed the way I refer to it a few months back, I would have said I've pretty much had the most horrendous year of my existence. And then I realized, no, I've actually had a year of growth, because I mean, 1 o'clock back to late last year, wife had a cancer scare, big stuff. I was losing my vision. Best friend went bankrupt. You might think, oh, that's not a big deal. It is when for at least 18 months, you are their emotional support. You know, not even the wife, you are their emotional support. So here's me up to my neck in quicksand, in the shit, holding this dude up so that he's, you know, he literally was borderline suicidal at times.
Jeez.
And that's fucking tough. That is tough, because it got to the stage where I had no fight left, Mark. You know, if I spin this round and it doesn't all fall over, I got a fucking cabinet full of trophies for world records of winning this and doing that. You know the story. You probably don't even know half of it. I mean, in the grip world, I literally had multiple world-class lifts that most of the people on World's Strongest Man couldn't do. You know, when you said, who's Steve? I've put the Strength Ninja. That was who I was. Been there, done it, like yourself, coached internationally, won championships, still hold British and world records. I was one of the go-to guys. You know, it's like, fucking hell, this guy's done it. He's got it all. And then I took a base jump and the parachute weren't attached, and I just bang. So everyone's got a limit in terms of coping. Now, you don't have to, let's use the gym. We know the gym. You don't have to have 100% to buckle. You can have 30%, but it's there for 18 months. And all of a sudden your knees start to go and you don't leave the house, and you internalize your grief. And something I realized, as someone that taught this, that done it, that lived it, you know, I spent a chunk of my lifetime in physical fitness. For the best part of the last 8 years, mindset, mindfulness, you know, pretty much one of the go-to guys in the fitness space. When lockdown kicked in, no joke, on a daily basis, people came to me. Coaches I'd never heard of sent me that, Steve, help. What do we do? People are terrified. They're lost. You know, a bit of wisdom. Is there anything you can say? Have you got a course? Have you got any audios or whatnot? Hundreds of people came to me, and I didn't mind that at all. And then I realized, you know what? I've got stuff up here that I can't manage. I mean, I haven't even told you half of what happened. There's a lot more, but you know, it starts to test you. And I think the biggest thing I learned, we will come to your questions, but obviously it all ties in.
Yeah, no, mate, just keep talking.
One thing I realized is, use the gym. You don't get strong looking about the weights, thinking about the weights, or reading a book about how to be strong. You got to fucking do it. And I was in a good place, you know, trust me, my ego left a long time ago. And if there's any of it left, it's about 10% that's hovering around, and I can't yet catch it with a mosquito swatter. And most of that disappeared with the humility of cancer scares and, you know, my own health. I mean, long COVID, I've probably had that for over a year now. You know, you don't get world records if you're unfit. I've done mad shit. I pushed to blackout multiple times. And I'm not saying this, you know, put it this way, for people to get an idea of the level I was at, I was David Goggins before David Goggins existed. I had a student call me up that had watched a National Geographic documentary. He said, Steve, this Thai boxing world champion just done 3,000 crunches in an hour. I said, I'll call you back. I've done 5,030 in an hour. Literally dropped and done it. And that was the level I was at. 1,600 press-ups in an hour, 136 in a minute, unofficial Guinness record. You know, 5 hours of kettlebells. For Great Ormond Street, we done a 1 million kilo challenge. 19 hours of a team lifting weight. At the end of that, I did 1,060 kettlebell jerks with a 16 with no rest. It was a PB. So after 19 hours of hard work, I had a 1 hour sprint finish and got a PB. You're not supposed to do that. I was an absolute animal. And then bang, I was in a place that tested me to the extent that it fucking scared me. I had no fight left. I had no target to hit. I'm not rubbish in the health service. In February, I went to Specsavers, and they'd done the test and the field and the pressure and the whatnot. My operation was 3 days ago. We're near Christmas. Now, I made over 100 phone calls to 6 different departments because none of them spoke to each other, lost my notes, didn't know what was going on. I actually turned up at the hospital, one of the top dudes there, you know, above a consultant, one of the top eye specialists, literally said to me, "I've no idea why you're here. I've no idea what's wrong with you. You probably had a lazy eye since birth." I left there, I sat in my car, and I fucking screamed. I screamed. I mean, mentioning the long COVID, I don't think people have got a grasp of what that's like unless you've had it. I didn't have the energy to roll over in bed and get out of bed some days. I would sit on the sofa lifeless, embarrassed and feeling like a failure because I couldn't even play with my kids. Mark, there's days where I didn't even leave the house. I would be out of breath, existing. You know, I had blood tests and more blood tests and lung x-ray, and I've seen this and this and this. Finally, to be referred to the long COVID clinic. And to be told after a 75-minute interview where poor little me got a smile and some hope because they got me there. Yeah, you got the symptoms and this, and have you had that? Yeah, and well, sorry, there's not much we can do for you. We'll send you a leaflet on managing stress, and ironically, there's a Teams thing for dealing with fatigue. And I sank. I absolutely sank back in the quicksand because I realised I'm on my own. I realised I am on my own for this. I have to be my own recovery. I'm not a surgeon, I'm not a medical professional, not a virologist, but I've got to be pretty much active in my own recovery. And where I am now, so I literally was there, crash, and I'm about halfway back up to being, you know, fully optimized. And I realized the reason I mentioned about strength in the gym and actually lifting the weights to get the strength, the level of resiliency I had was very good for the low level life stuff, you know. Looking at your reactions, looking at what triggers you, thinking, you know, reframing language and all that. But not when the boulders start to split your head open. I didn't have that level because I've never been there. And here's the thing, for anyone wanting resiliency or confidence or motivation or strength, you never get it reading a book or going to a workshop or sitting there affirming, you know, with this mantra or this meditation. It don't happen. I developed resiliency because for months I was angry, I was fighting, I was resisting, and eventually I accepted, because I think the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. It severs trust at a core level. And let's be honest, you know, you can't tell yourself a joke and laugh, or you might, I don't know, but you know, you can't trick yourself. So here's me saying, this isn't me. Literally, that was the tune that was going on. This isn't me. What's happening? What's happened to the strength ninja? Where's the fit guy? You know, the dude that kicks ceilings and rolls up frying pans and bends iron bars on his throat. Where's he gone? He's fucking died. I literally felt like a phone on 5% looking for a charge lead. Mark, I had nothing left. And when I say I had nothing left, I had that internal conversation. Can't you at least do it for your kids? And this fucking terrified me because the answer was no. And there's layers to this, because underneath that was, doesn't that bother you? No. And then there's another layer. Aren't you bothered that this doesn't bother you? See your kids' faces. Are they? And it's no. I'd slipped into this apathy that was killing me. And I realized how bad it was because late last year, I was sitting outside the gym and I said, I can't deal with this. It is bigger than my ability to cope with it. So I called up the Samaritans. I mean, you don't call them for a chat. You call them because, you know, you've had enough. I called them 3 times and it rang out for 20 minutes each time. Yeah. If I was suicidal, I probably wouldn't be here. It got to the stage where, not as someone actively considering suicide, I walked down that road halfway and I had a plonk and I had a deep reflection on the fact that if I hadn't done the work I'd already done, and if I didn't have a wonderful family around me, this would probably be enough. You know, unclip your seatbelt and a sharp turn into a truck. Boof, game over, good night. And then I realized that that is a very realistic option for a lot of people that let this stuff build up and do not have an escape. You know, when you're in the kitchen and it's on fire, the last thing you want to do is sit there and work out. Well, you bang, you're out the door, you're out the window. And that, for a lot of people, when what they are dealing with is so much bigger than their ability to cope with it. You know, we say, how could you do that? You got 3 kids. It's like, yeah, unless you've been in that vehicle with that computer, running that program, and you've felt that that was the only way you can end your pain, you've got no idea. And here's the thing, not only did it build my resilience, because you only get the resilience from accepting where you are. You know, this was the truth of this was my reality. I wasn't the fit guy, I wasn't the coach, I wasn't the mindset. I was in a deep, dark place. And once I accepted that, I realized this is a very important lesson that's long overdue. Think of the heart rate, boom, you know, the peaks and troughs. You learn a few lessons when you're at the top of the hill, but you learn the more important ones from pain and from suffering, because for me that widens the map, that allows you to explore the bits of you that maybe you're not aware exist or maybe aren't comfortable approaching. And it humbled me at a very deep level, because it probably removed whatever ego was left, but more importantly it made me a better person and a better coach, because I got people at a core level. You know, most of us are hanging on by a thread, but particularly with the shit show that's going on at the moment globally and economically, you know, we're not in a good place, many of us. And I realized that people are fighting an inner war that you know nothing about, and that for me is the reason behind that mantra, be kind. You know, you see just go on TikTok and see the shit thrown at people. There's a darkness in humanity that unfortunately has that as an outlet. And ironically, I posted today about, you know, instead of throwing your crap on social media, go to a therapist, because you'll help everyone. Because it doesn't help, it absolutely sinks you further. I can't hit you and not feel bad. 2 people get hurt. If I come at you, or I slate you, or I want to attack you, or I hate you, or I 2 of us, what Buddha said, you know, seek revenge, dig 2 graves. We've got empathy, we've got mirror neurons. You can't physically or verbally hurt someone without doing 2 things. Hurting yourself, but realizing that that's a mirror. They're not the problem. You turned up with anger, and that's the only currency you're fluent in. Get help, speak to someone, even just a neutral person where you can, you know, ring the cloth, unload. Because here's the thing, unless it's out there, you don't know why you've got what you got or what you think about. It's air the dirty laundry, as we say. You know, if you let it out there and objectively go through it, you get to see patterns. You get to know why you respond the way you do. You get to see triggers. You get to use that prefrontal cortex to actually fast forward to the end of 2 paths and think, well, that always leads here. So if I have a new one, maybe I won't end up going insane and losing 6 hours defending something that's pointless online. And honestly, it was the most valuable lesson, but fuck me, did it hurt. It nearly pushed me off the edge, mate. And I've got absolutely no shame. I had it together. Physically and mentally, I had it together. And it almost broke me to the extent where I felt like a failure. I asked for help. And the reason I'm still here is because of my family, mate. There's no embarrassment admitting that. You know, all of these things and tricks we do in the gym, that's not strength. Strength is facing your darkness. Strength is still getting up, even though you don't feel like it. Strength is realizing that unless you get your stuff together, when the storm comes, bang, you're going to sink. Because here's the thing, being at the top of the hill doesn't teach you as much as falling off it. That's an intro.
Mate, that is a hell of an intro.
Same time next week.
Yeah, brilliant. That concludes this week's show. Ironically, it'll probably be people's favourite because I wasn't involved.
Well, I did say if you can keep Mark quiet for 20 minutes, you.
Yeah, keep. Mate, I sort of, as you were talking there, I had to sort of pinch myself and make myself realise that I'm supposed to be talking to you, not just like watching a fascinating thing unfold in front of me, if that makes sense. So I kept getting all of these questions as we were going along, and I was like, no, I'm not going to interrupt you. I'll just let you sort of get it all out, and I'll come back to as many of those questions as I can as as we keep unfolding and
Mm-hmm.
digging down rabbit holes and whatnot. But one thing you touched on there slightly is about when if you attack me, two people get hurt, and that's kind of to contextualize that could be physical, but it could be in the world of the new age world of social media. It could be a shitty, snidey comment, or you feel the need to have your opinion on something that might not want, need, or deserve your opinion to be known. If it hasn't been asked for, and you don't have to go very far on social media, and everyone will have seen or experienced this, where you just get absolute shitstorms that are A, completely pointless, and B, completely pointless.
And that is more what I was referring to, if I'm honest, mate. I mean, you think of the website like I fucking love science. You'll see someone say something, and then someone else goes under it and says a thing. And Mark, you know when you hit it and it expands, they've spent 8 hours having 80 different arguments with everyone that originally commented on there. And I think, that's not a good use of your time.
What's the point? Because no one ever has read a comment on Facebook and gone, oh, do you know what?
Life changing.
I was wrong. I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to tell all these people that I was wrong. I don't know. I genuinely think I've done that several times in the past, but
I've done it a few. Do you know what? It's very humbling. I've done it a few times where, if I've got a belief or a concept that's slightly out of whack, let's think about it. We're a patchwork quilt of the people that influenced us and the path we took. No, none of us know it all, and I'm well aware that there's parts of my map that maybe are out of date or have got a virus. And if someone actually corrects me and shows me a better way, I'm going to thank them. Why? You've elevated me. You've, ironically with a vision, you've cleared the lens. I thought I'd put that one in there. I think TikTok is a great one. You've got so many groups against so many groups, and let's be brutally honest here. I think the big problem is, if you go back to when we were kids, you'd have crazy Mike around the corner. Everyone, all of his family knew he was nuts, and his neighbors knew he was nuts, and his doctors knew he was nuts, and that was it. Now he's got a mobile and he can spread poison far and wide whenever and wherever he chooses. And I do think that's a big issue. I think that's a huge issue where people that, obviously you've got to be careful where you tread with the mental side of stuff and censorship and free speech. I get it. It's a minefield. But so many people, I think, there should be some kind of course, some ethical course for how to use social media without becoming a hand grenade. Because you look at and you think, how did you wake up this morning and decide that was a good thing? I mean, and a point in case, God knows where they were, but there's an above average woman. I mean, even that could get you in trouble, couldn't it? I mean, what do those mean anymore? There's an above average sized woman with some food, and there's a woman opposite filming her and saying something like, oh, look at 2-ton Tilly or 2-ton Tessie. Now Mark, she hears it and actually looks over, and you see her sink literally like someone switched her off. But then not only did she do that in public, she uploaded it to a fucking platform, and instantly that tells me two things. First and foremost, if you're in that much of a crowded space, why does no one nearby say, do you know what, you've got to check yourself? That is not good behavior. That's not how people behave. You've got to check yourself. Doesn't happen, does it? Because we avoid or we film. Someone's knocked off their bike and their head's gashed. Film that might get 10,000 likes. It's like, what happened to helping the poor sod? The shift is terrifying of, either not going close. Literally, if a kid's about to fall off a climbing frame, you don't go near it in case someone films you and calls you a paedophile. It's like, how did we get this fucked up? I don't get it.
It's scary, isn't it? It is really scary.
Your everyday normal Joe that wants to do good and help, second guesses because of consequences. And then the other side, I think Mike Tyson put it best. He said social media's given too many people the option of throwing stuff around and not getting a smack in the mouth for it.
Mm.
You know, I'm not an advocate of violence, but I tell you what, when you see what people believe is their right to inflict pain and harm on others with no consequence, that's a serious problem. I mean, the thing is, now you don't even need to be you. You can have a picture of a cat and some silly made up name. So, you know, short of tracing you IP wise, no one knows. You don't even need to show up as you. And that's the thing. You can throw shit and hide.
Mm-hmm.
That's the perfect thing for people that in the nicest way, and I teach this stuff, are literally soap dodging basement dwellers.
The coming back to something you touched on, like when you were sort of talking about your own journey.
Yeah.
Do you think, and it's a fairly loaded question, that there's the people who sit at home, the keyboard warriors, fake accounts, or they just shit stirrers, trolls, or they're just fucking dickheads, whatever list they fall onto? Do you think that them going and causing some pain, inflicting pain or discomfort to somebody else, usually somebody that they've never met, never seen in the flesh, and have no concept of anything that's happened up until they've seen this post or tweet or comment or what have you, surely is it a case of they're sitting in that vehicle like you were, and they've got so much inner pain that they don't know how to deal with, and it almost feels like, well, maybe subliminally, if I inflict a bit of pain on Brenda, that might take away a bit of the pain that I've got that I don't know how to cope with. Does that make sense?
No, completely. And
I don't think it's largely a conscious decision.
No.
I'm just saying, like, is it a completely subliminal, like, well, fuck you, Brenda, your fucking trousers look shit. Like, do they think that that's going to make them feel better for something they're not tackling with?
Here's the thing that I've realized with that. If a person, for whatever reason, is wandering around with a rain cloud proverbially over their head, you know, that they're literally in a bad place, whatever happens has happened. Probably the last thing they want to do is go online, because what you will then do is, you know, if I've got pain and anger and hate, all I need is a target to walk over that crosshair, and they're going to get it. And it's the thing is, it's so important for other people, and I do hope they get this. It's never about you. You could choose to be a victim and react, but you've got to realize that that hand grenade never had your name on it in the first place. Their behavior speaks volumes about them, and it actually has nothing to do with you. You know, if someone throws a brick, it's not because they want to hit you with a brick, it's because they want to get rid of the bloody brick. You know, they've got this weight, they've got this burden, and let's be honest, quite often that's the only language they know. You know, if you've got 3 barrels and you turn the first one, you got beer, you turn the second one, you got beer, you turn the third one, you got Ribena, what comes out is indicative of what's inside. So when these people are online effing and blinding and cursing, and you know that that is a simple reflection of someone that's not at peace, doesn't even know they're not at peace, and more importantly is yet to reach out for help, and probably hasn't even walked into that arena of, why am I like this? Why do I do it? Why do I hurt people? And why does it then intensify and come back and hurt me doubly? Because as I said, you can't hurt someone else and not hurt yourself. You probably numb yourself at some level, but I think if people take anything from their ventures on social media, it's to realize that, you know, if you think about it, think about communication, non-verbal is about 93%, give or take. Yeah. So how many people do you know that actually go live or do videos out of, let's say, 100% across all the people?
Not many.
Handful. Yeah, probably 1, 2 or 3%. Little frog in the front. So yeah, those are the people that you actually get to know at a deeper level, because you see them for who they are. Now, for everyone else, what do you get? You get lines of text which can be taken out of context. So you've got Scrabble, yeah?
Yeah.
This entire human being that's been here for decades and lived millions of micro experiences You know them as a photo and a few lines of text, and maybe what type of movies or food they prefer, and what they do as a profession. When they communicate, most of the intention there is missing because of the non-verbals that we don't get. And yet, we think we understand them and know them. We don't. And I think the big danger here is we are building up so many superficial friendships where we actually don't know people. And the big danger there is we've built a throwaway friendship custom. You say something I don't like, gone. Mark, I would rather sit with someone for an hour in a coffee shop than have 8,000 friends online that I don't know, because they're not friends. They're acquaintances. They're people that sit behind a computer. And yes, there's some wonderful ones you can meet. But here's the thing. That's not a real relationship. It could be the start of one, but it isn't. And for me, there's that psychological distance. And I think the greatest quote I ever heard is, it is much easier to push a button and kill 1 million people than to stab someone looking you in the eyes. That is the real trouble with social media. Throw your shit and don't care who it hits and how it hurts them, because you're off and it doesn't matter. And I think that there should be some kind of legal thing, because you've got people committing suicide.
Yeah.
Do you want to spend a couple of minutes delving into a pretty dark place?
Mate, I am easy. Like I mean this in the nicest way, but the deeper and darker, the better. Like the whole purpose. I mean, like with most things, I don't plan them overly thoroughly.
Yeah.
But the point behind me recording these shows with the same 4 questions that every single person, it's the same structure for everyone, but obviously the tangents we go off are very, very different. And the whole purpose is, I'm sort of bored and sick of listening to little 2-minute interviews on the news or on a radio or on a TV program, what have you, that is just all bloody skipping in the fields and holding hands and making daisy chains.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think that's all bollocks. I would rather speak to people about real shit, because if you're watching the news and you're like, oh, but I just need to want it more because this guru's just told me you need to lay in bed at night and just want success, and that's what I did, and now look at me, I'm successful. Like, yeah, but what about the 99.9% of people that wanted success and they got fuck all? So maybe that isn't helpful. And if all they're doing is looking at people, say, look at me, look how brilliant I am, look how much money I've got, like that's not realistic to the vast majority of people. I want them to hear real fucking shit that they go, oh, do you know what, maybe it's okay for me to be sad or anxious or nervous or fed up or angry about these things. Maybe the voices in my head are more normal than I thought they were.
Yeah, just touching on what you said, I'm glad you mentioned that. For me, there's no wrong instruments in the orchestra, and that's important to realize. You've got this kind of culture of removing the bad stuff. I mean, hence filters. The blemishes. Let me ask you a question. So we're going to go deep and dark fast here. We're going to. Would you kill if the lives of your daughters were under threat?
Yes.
Right. So why do we need to pretend we're good and perfect?
I don't.
The irony, though, everyone wants to look great online and get rid of the blemishes and look. Oh, look at me, a wonderful, kind, caring human. If someone broke in my door now, and I am the gatekeeper between the lives of my wife and children, I'm not going to sit down there and think, oh, I wonder if they had any childhood trauma issues.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe I should rub some lavender into their earlobe.
Let me put some Mozart on and see if I can upload a mindset. Do you know what? I'm a chilled out guy, mate. But there's boundaries.
Yeah.
There's a line. You cross that, and there's a fucking danger zone. You know, I would do anything to protect my family, and anyone that I've asked that to, they instantly reply yes without thinking. I said, right, that's the real version of you that you don't have to be ashamed of or hide or be embarrassed about.
Yeah.
So stop pretending with all these filters and good and airy fairy and nice and clean. And you know, I think, what is it? Alan Watts said the element of irreducible rascality. You know, we know who we are deep down behind closed doors. And going back to what I said earlier, which ties on to this, you know, have you ever heard someone say, I shouldn't have these thoughts or I shouldn't feel this way? You do. And when you stop trying to get rid of it, you can actually accept yourself, because there's no wrong instruments. You've got internal weather, you've got thoughts, and you've got feelings, emotions. Yeah, none of them are wrong. It's only when you fight them and want to get rid of them that you actually exacerbate the problem, because like clouds passing, I guarantee you, they always disappear. It's when you give chase and have to do something, oh, I shouldn't feel sad, rather than, oh, do you know what, there's sadness. I mean, if you're really clever, the body is experiencing sadness. So there's, you know, it's because we're leasing this vehicle.
Yeah.
I mean, to literally arrive and probably put a lot of people at ease. We are the universe having a brief human experience, renting this suit for hopefully several decades, and then who knows what next. I don't know if I've been here multiple times, and I don't know what's after, but I know that I'm here, and that's important. And that for me is good enough. And then we'll come on to the meaning of life, which you kindly posed as a question. But yeah, I think the biggest thing I've helped people with, and you got Blaise Pascal to blame for this one, is to paraphrase, most of our issues would disappear if we could sit alone in a room for 10 minutes, because we've forgotten that art of doing nothing and being okay doing nothing.
Yeah.
You hear people say, I've got to be busy. I hate being bored. I've got to do stuff. It's like, well, if you think about it, you've actually said that you will actively avoid this moment because you don't like doing nothing. And that's the only place you can ever be present, creative, feel love, forgive. It's not out there, it's here now. And yet we're constantly hijacked with either distraction or stuff and the need to be elsewhere. So for you to be at peace with whatever's going on inside and learn to accept that, and if I'm honest, heal that relationship, because we're broadcasting stations. The level at which you have developed a relationship to self is an indicator of what you give out to others and what you are willing to accept from them. You know, you hear people that have had a bad relationship, and you know they're either never going to see another person again and the walls go up, or you know 2 weeks later they're in a new one. And you look at the track record and you think, well, so that's 17 bad relationships in 3 years. You know, there's one constant there. You turn up and teach people how to treat you based on how you treat yourself. We broadcast out. It's a two-way street. And unless you've got the borders and boundaries, which if I'm honest, stops people being a doormat and teaches them a very positive word. No. Think about that one. You treat people how to teach you. Sorry, you teach people how to treat you. Reverse that and reload. And when people get this, the penny drops. Because our biggest progress comes from realizing that we are worthy of our own compassion and we can meet our needs. That's the game changer for a lot of people that are looking for other things or experiences or people to fix what they feel is broken inside them or is missing. And nothing's missing, but if you go on a journey to find stuff, you've got a creative brain that is very good at making up problems. You will search for that for the end of time, believing that you're not enough.
Yeah,
when you always have been.
I definitely spent probably my entire 20s going through that, like, broken relationships where oh, it's her fault, it's her fault, it's her fault, it's her fault, and then I kind of got a point. I was like, hang on a minute, I'm the common denominator here. Like, what if it's my fault? And this coincided with the similar sort of time where I was similar position to how you described. Like I wasn't suicidal, but I definitely sat in my car a mile away from where I knew there was a right-hand turn and a solid brick wall smack in the middle of Wisbeach. You'll probably know the Harecroft Road junction. And I was like, I could just do 100 along here, cream into the wall. It's over in a second. And I wasn't thinking about doing it, but I was just, part of my brain sort of had said, that is an option. And then the other
wonder there, don't you?
Yeah, just like I was like, oh shit. And it was the realization of like, shit, this is my fault. It's not their fault. But if I keep saying it's everybody else's fault, then one of my only options is to just rip off the band-aid, smash into the wall, and it's all over. Like, or can take the slightly more difficult option, which is to look internally. And maybe I'm the problem. And if I'm the problem, and I can help myself, and I can sort of admit that first of all, that's like the biggest part. Then build things back up afterwards. As like, right, now I need to go home. I don't need to have that option anymore. I'm instantly a lot more content in myself that I've admitted I'm probably the problem. And then why am I the problem? How am I a problem? What can I do and change? I can't go back and undo those 10 years of turmoil that a handful of other women had to deal with, but maybe that's a saving grace for them somewhere. They probably still think I'm a complete arsehole. They'd be right to a certain degree, but maybe hopefully that might have helped them to find to find a better path in life than they were on. But it's and at that same time, and I've talked about this in the last half dozen shows that I've recorded as well, I've become so happy in my own company, because all of a sudden I can sit in silence for an hour. I can go for a walk with don't have to have my headphones in, and I'm just happy being rather than doing. I've fucking done everything near enough. Like I've been places, I've done shit, I've got stories to tell. But there's not a topic we could talk about that I wouldn't have some sort of funny, something that I think is a funny anecdote loosely based on that subject. So do I need to do more stuff? Well, yeah, doing stuff is good and fun. And now you've got kids on the horizon. I'm doing different stuff that I'd never done before. But I really like not doing stuff. And that's not because I'm ignorant or I'm lazy, or it's not entirely because I'm socially inept. A large part of it is because I'm just really content being in my own head with my own thoughts and dealing with the good and bad. And just one final thing on there that I think ties in with all of this. It's another point that I've mentioned a few times in previous shows, is about these opposing forces. And I've talked about how everything on the planet works in opposites: hot and cold, night and day, up and down, like deep and shallow, like you name it. We have to have the opposites. And I wonder whether, I'm thinking out loud here, I wonder whether social media, crop, filter, edit, give everybody the good stuff, the highlights, that's not giving me any of the shit stuff. Am I ignoring and trying to hide that stuff? Does that then create more conflict in people? Because when I'm content just sitting here fucking staring at the wall like a retard, like, I can think about the really, really, really shit stuff, but I appreciate it because I know that I need it, because without it, it wouldn't allow me to have the really good stuff. I don't sit there resenting it. I almost depend on the shit because I know that I've got the rainbows and the unicorns at the other end.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I think it's very true what you've said. The act of pretending, it not only severs trust, it starts to erode self-esteem in a massive way. Because let's think of Boy That Cried Wolf, a perpetual liar. When you've put up so many versions of you to fit in, to be part of the team or the squad and to look right, the one constant that is now buried under so many filters and objections and disregard and hatred, eventually you don't even know who you are at a surface level, never mind a core level. And I'm glad you mentioned sitting with yourself, because that is a real issue for a lot of people now with the broadband microwave generation. We don't have downtime. And I said to people, we're going to have two doors today. One's actually answering your question, but I said to people, if you imagine a door and there's a great big sign, boredom, and you open it, what's inside? And if, it says tasks I didn't want to do or a job I hated, and most of the people actually said nothing. because we're bored when nothing's going on. And I said, if nothing's going on, you're present, and the potential is to be at peace with this presence, because there's all the noise and the distraction. Can you imagine avoiding now? You know, for you to say that you actually sit there and, you know, weather the storm and listen to self. I mean, if you think about it, meditation or mindfulness, I think one of the best explanations I heard was checking in with self. Literally checking in with self. Being there, being with this moment. Here's the thing, you know, we're human beings, yeah? Shakespeare, to be or not to be. I think evolution is to become a human doing, but doing the work in a selfish way, which actually is self first. Realizing that we carry trauma, realizing that we carry ways of responding that don't serve us, that are learned from teachers and parents, and, you know, the way we snap to things that trigger us. You know, perfect example here is you've done a thing and then you feel terrible afterwards. You've got one response during stress, you know, path A. For you to rewire or literally, you know, replace it or produce another one, you know, door B. Door B only exists when, instead of rushing in and losing it because someone said a thing, you actually hit pause, and two things happen there, Mark. Hulk mode, the boiling pot, starts to diffuse and simmer because that angst, it goes. It's like, yeah, hold a half squat or, you know, heavy weight. You're fine, and in 20 seconds, you're not fine. It diffuses, but then you're left with choice, which you don't have if you've got an angry knee-jerk subconscious reaction. When you've got the gift of choice, largely you can actually walk past and realize it didn't actually need any input from you. And that's how you save yourself so much pain, so much. I really think that safe and intelligent, I pause there because, you know, obviously, you know, it could be Pandora's box. I think a safe, ethical and intelligent use of social media at probably school level would be very beneficial when you realize that these aren't shapeless non-people. They're humans with cancer and illness and behind on their bills, and they've just had a breakup and their kids in Great Ormond Street. These are real people that you're, look at this twat and film them, could be what pushes them over the edge. Yeah, we don't realize that. And when you sit with the reality of that, I think that reminds you that this is a different medium, but it's still human. There's still a sentient being at the other end of that digital pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember hearing, like, whether it's a story or just like an analogy that I heard, and it was about a guy on the tube, or he's in America, so he's on the train. What do they call them in America? The subway.
I told you,
so he's on the subway. Yeah, I think you probably did. Yeah, the subway, and about the crazy kid who's running around, kicking off, like swinging off the chandeliers, and there's other people on the carriage who are getting sick and tired. Like, why is this guy not controlling his child while the guy just sits blissfully unaware of what's going on? And it transpires that they're on their way home from hospital. The wife and the mother has died, and he doesn't know how to tell the kid or whatever the story is, that he's sitting there lost. How the fuck am I gonna rebuild my life, and what the fuck am I gonna do about the children? He's not thinking about his kid who's skipping up and down the carriage, disturbing other people from reading their newspapers. And sort of up until I heard that story, I would F and blind out of the window to any car driver or anyone who says a comment. I'd be like, I need to fucking tell that person they're wrong. And do you know what? In the last few years, the amount of things I've typed up, I'm like, yeah, that'll tell them. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Delete. I deleted. I did it yesterday, and I'll give you the example I did yesterday. I do it so much, and I'm like that. I have done some inextricably cuntish things in my life.
Join the club, mate.
But deep down, if you took like an average of my entire being, I'm 80% a bloody good bloke. Like, I know fine well I am. That doesn't mean I'm 20% terrible, and probably a few percent of that should be locked up in prison somewhere.
Yeah.
But if you just took an average of me, I'm all right. But I'm fully aware that I'm capable of doing things that would not be overly popular or nice in the eyes of some people or all people. So I'm like, well, what if other people are the same? What if deep down they're not like complete arseholes to the bone and every ounce of their being?
Not. Think of the bell curve of the average. You know, if you took 1 million people as a standard, normal distribution, 90% of them are decent, good folk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your end, your bell ends, you know, your extreme ends. You're going to have people that are absolute saints, and then you're going to have, murderers and criminals and people that don't give a fuck and would really want to hurt you and think nothing about it.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember that if you're fed that narrative, and if that's all you see, you start to believe that bell curve is full of arseholes. And I think that's a big problem, because it isn't. You've got to remember that, well, I've got a brick wall here and I'm focusing on the one that's wonky, and I'm forgetting that the rest of it's actually pretty good and holds up. And I think that's such a huge danger, where you're told what's wrong, you're seen fighting and in groups and out groups, and this is happening here and that's happening here, and what they said and she said and he did, and it's too much. And here's the thing, our brain isn't capable of having 6,000 conversations, or being bombarded with the lives of 7,000 people across 10 different platforms. It simply cannot work at that level. When you look at nomadic hunter-gatherers, where we were tribes of 10, 20, 30 people, you've now got access to the world, and that's a huge problem. And I think for a lot of people, I'm glad you mentioned that, it's really about realizing that no one can do it for you, but for you to literally step back and take stock of consequences at two levels. For me, there's always a front and a back of every coin. What will this do to the person? But the big boom, why do I feel the need to do it in the first place? That's ownership. And I think ownership is so important. A classic phrase in the fitness industry, I fell off the wagon. So just sit with that for 5 seconds. I fell off the wagon. Who is at fault? Everyone but me, because I fell off the wagon. My blame has been kicked out the window. It doesn't matter where it lands. It's not me. I fell off the wagon. Once you take ownership and realize that the wagon is the same as saying the dinosaur ate my homework, once we stop being that child and looking for anyone else to blame for the fact that we do not have the discipline to trust ourselves to meet our needs effectively as a sentient being. And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that, Mark. For someone to say, do you know what? Let's do a brief meditation, okay? Take a deep breath, relax, close your eyes. Inhale, repeat after me. Right now, my life is a complete fucking mess.
Right now, my life is a complete fucking mess.
And here's the thing, that's probably true for 70 to 80% of people.
Yeah.
That are winging it, playing Tom and Jerry, keeping it together, putting on a brave face. Remove the comedy element. Right now, that is the truth for so many people, but they're terrified of admitting it. And when you actually stand in your truth of life is a mess, health left a few years ago, I'm struggling, you then have the option of stepping up to do the work that eventually brings you back into a good place that you're happy with and at peace with. Because by throwing anything out there, all that does is it disempowers you, and it stops you taking ownership and changing it. And that's why time rolls on and we actually move backwards. I say life is walking up the down escalator. So you've got the escalator that's going down and you're on it. Yeah. If you do nothing, you get left behind. If you do a little bit, you're going to stay still. If you diligently work on the things that are important and overcome that inertia, you're going to start to make progress, because you are up against time and an aging body and many things that change. Yeah, we've got enough time. We've got enough time, but it's ticking, and people don't realize that because they've got this belief of immortality. I can put it all in a big cupboard and deal with it later. Not yet. When? Doesn't matter when, but I've got time.
Mm-hmm.
Until the shit hits the fan and you need a new eyeball, or partner gets cancer, or, you know, kid dies in a car accident, something like that. You got real stuff and you think, why have I been a spectator? Watching my life go. Been in a job I've hated, been in a relationship that's better than being single, numbed myself with addiction, drama and entertainment, all while health and happiness and stuff was slipping. And I knew it, and I actively watched it, and I was fucking scared to show up and own it because I didn't think I could. And as soon as you do, the whole game changes.
Yeah, and those people probably think to themselves, but at least I got some really good. I won some really good arguments on Twitter.
Well, at least I know, you know, all the people on Celebrity Get Me Out of Here, or, you know, there was someone, they were literally, the radio was on and people were talking about how long people in the Get Me Out of Here were in for, and someone left in 24 hours and someone else did, and in 2004, so and so, and I'm, how do you know that much about something that pointless? Now, I get people have their escapes, but here's the thing. If you've watched every Emmerdale and EastEnders and Corrie and whatnot, and, you know, this is going to hurt a few people. And put it this way, this is how I coach. It is 100% compassion, but compassion isn't there, life's okay. There's, what the fuck are you doing? That's not, well, that's a bit much. Yeah, because you need that. Sometimes you need a frying pan around the head more than a there, you've got this, because it won't shake you out of the reality that you are not showing up and doing stuff. On your deathbed, you want more arguments on Facebook? Or do you want another year seeing sunsets and spending time with your grandchildren? Do you want more EastEnders? And here's a shocker. If you've watched EastEnders since it came out, you know, when you got the omnibus and the reruns, a year of your life has gone to that. I hit the calculator one day. It's literally like so many thousands of hours. It's a year of your life. And that stopped someone watching it. They went, I don't get that back, do I? I said, no.
And what about those, the same, probably a large chunk of those people have also watched Corrie. They've also watched Emmerdale because they're into their soaps. And you go, right, that's 3 years of your life. You're now 60. Like, you either call it a day now and you're gone, or you could have had 3 more years with your grandchildren. You're like, fuck me. Maybe knowing the ins and outs of bloody Albert Square might not have been that important.
And you do need those shock tactics because some people are so dug into those spectator, you know, the what knows. Some people are so dug into having a spectator seat to their own life that the very idea of managing it and showing up and exercising and eating a little bit better and getting to bed earlier and maybe cutting out some friendships that aren't serving them in some way and saying no to things instead of being a doormat. The very idea of addressing that absolutely terrifies them. And here's the thing. You then get lost in the comfort of distraction and, you know, la, not my problem. I do want to do it. Do you remember I said, let's go to a really dark place quick?
Yeah, do it.
Jamie Bolger.
Yeah.
So literally such a big thing. It was world news, wasn't it? That 2 children murdered a toddler. Yeah, no, the details are
early 90s, was it?
93, I think, 92 or 93. I mean, obviously, when you've got one that age, that hits. I mean, I looked into the, not police files, but I looked into the details of what actually happened, and it's fucking terrifying. It's heartbreaking. I won't. But anyway, why did I mention that? I mentioned that because several years ago, a personal trainer that I know shared a link showing one of the killers. They got, you know, new ID, they got rehoused, they got name changed and all of it. And anyway, someone had basically found where they were. And that individual ended up killing themselves. And guess what?
Wrong person.
Wrong person. Yeah. And this person actually wrote, to end the pain and suffering that my wife and daughter are experiencing, I've got no alternative but to end my life. So someone committed suicide for being missing. It's the pitchfork mob, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so who smashed my window? 10 people outside. It was that guy. Bang. Yeah. He's dead. Oh no, actually, it was. You can't take it back.
He looked a bit like that guy,
yeah,
but...
and that's the thing. We've got this herd pitchfork mentality. Now, what I actually posted, and he's a nice chap, and he removed the post, and I said to him, in less than 60 seconds, I went on Google to realize this was mistaken identity and a genuine person that actually took their own life because there'd been, here's the Bulger, there's one of the Bulger killers. And I thought, if that can escalate that quick, what could you do to other people by bit naughty, misbehaving online? That could end someone, and people don't realize that. People don't realize that it's almost as though because they're not here and it's a screen, there's no consequences.
Yeah.
There's actually more consequences. If I call you a cunt, there's two of us.
Mm.
If I do that online and then berate you and belittle you and hate you, and there's 10,000 people seeing that, and people start to message you because of what someone said you did, and you've literally seen people close their accounts through abuse, through being mistargeted, misidentified, and wow.
It's scary, isn't it? It's very scary.
It's very scary to know that it could happen to you. That's the thing.
We've gone over an hour and haven't even asked you one of my first
Do you want? I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me unplug my charge lead, and I'll tell you why. This may help some of your viewers. If you've got a MacBook that's metal with an external mic, don't touch it while recording, because I had to redo 3 meditations and an entire audio book. Because as soon as you touch it, boom, which you don't hear until you listen to it back.
It sounds all right so far. I can hear you properly, but you have paused. You're frozen.
Oh, do you know what? I unplugged the wrong lead, mate. I unplugged my...
See, this is the problem when you give people fucking choices. They shouldn't be allowed choices.
Let me unplug the right lead, only because if I'm going to touch the screen, we're going to come through as boo, because obviously most people listen to podcasts in their headphones and all that. So let me go across to your questions. You fire away and I'll do my best. I've got them all lined out for you, mate. I'm ready to go.
Before I go into those 4 key ones, I do have that I'm an hour late doing it, but we were chatting. I've got a 1 minute quick intro round, which is quick fire. But
Go.
I want you to imagine that the end is coming, and
for real, or we're pretending?
Yeah, for real. You know that the end of the world is imminent. And I'm going to give you 8 topics, and I want to know what the last thing from each of those topics you would want to experience.
Oh yeah, I like that. So
I'm
a big fan of dystopian zombie apocalypse and all that, so bring it on, man.
Cool. So what would your last meal be?
Last meal, a great big slap up Chinese with many a dish.
Beautiful. From a Chinese takeaway, or from like a nice restaurant?
Sit down restaurant, live it up,
Fair enough, yeah. Last drink?
Oh, last drink. I'm not really an alcohol fan. I'd probably, do you know what? I really do like a mojito or a caipirinha. So probably one of them to say bon voyage to planet Earth.
A mojito is a good choice.
They are. There's something about them, especially if they get the leaves right,
Yeah, I went to I was in a cocktail bar in Glasgow years ago, and they had like mojitos that had like crispy smoked bacon in them, which sounds vile, but it was probably delicious. Yeah, really nice. What would be the last movie you would watch?
Oh, now that's interesting. I don't think I'd go with a end of the world movie, ironically. Probably go back to one of my favorites, and that would be, it's a tough one between Shawshank and Interstellar, so I'd say Interstellar.
I'd go Shawshank because it's probably an hour longer. You get a bit more time.
Yeah.
Last band or musician you would listen to?
Oh, now I got varied taste. I would love to see the Proms at the Albert Hall.
Oh, very nice, very cultural. They're probably now being moved to Manchester because I think
Yeah,
all of the
all full with, you know, Tchaikovsky's cannons with the 1812 and all that business. Go out with a bang, eh?
oh, literally. Last book you would read?
Last book I would read. Well, I'd say the best book I've ever read is Lord of the Rings. Thankfully, the movie's done the book justice. Yeah, probably to revisit the fact that Tolkien can spend 100 words describing the side of a riverbank and get you completely absorbed in that world.
Cool. Last town or city you would visit?
I'd love to go back to Bali.
Last hobby that you would partake in?
Tearing the forest up on the mountain bike.
Nice. And then finally, who would be the last iconic person that you would want to hear from?
That's a good one. That is a good one.
And iconic can be whatever you want it
Yeah,
to be.
yeah, absolutely. I'd probably like to have a chat and find out why Stephen Fry left Twitter.
Fair enough.
I mean, he's a chap with a depth of knowledge. It'd be good to explore stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, he is. Cool. Now people know a little bit more about you, and the first of my 4 questions.
Fire away. I will make sure my eyeballs work.
Who is Stephen Aish? Obviously,
well, I've only got a pretty good idea now. I mean, I've put down here.
We're giving people like an hour of insight into who you are, but in your own words, in your own way, who the hell is Stephen Aish?
Right, so I've put down formerly a strength ninja that achieved inner peace and then crash landed. Having fully experienced the highs and lows of life, I now have explored enough of my map to add value to the lives of other people and meet my own needs at an exceptional level in order to live a meaningful existence. And I think to just add on to that, I've realized that it's crucial to give back more than you've taken, but ensuring that that is not from guilt. I think that's the icing on the cake. You don't do it because you have to, or you feel obliged, or it's some penance for keeping you out of jail because you've been a bad boy or girl. I believe that giving back more than you took is probably what life's all about.
Yeah, well, it's if you think about it, in essence, if for anything to develop or to improve or to not go to shit, the only way to do that is to stand on the shoulders of giants and 100%. To be able to see a little bit further, and to add something to it, so that you then don't mind being the stepladder for the next generation to come and see a little bit further, and so on and so forth.
Completely. What is it? Plant trees that you'll never experience the shade of.
Yeah. But that message doesn't seem to be.
No, there's not too. If anything, we're chopping them down at an alarming rate. So let's forget that one.
Yeah, right, Bolsonaro over there. So in that, how has that answer changed over the years? So if I'd have asked you that question 10 years ago, or also, what if I ask you that question in 10 years' time? How do you think it will be different, if at all?
Yeah, do you know what? Let me cancel that. It would have changed dramatically, because if you wind the clock back literally 10 years, most of who I was came from what I did, Mark. So I built this suit of armor by being this strength ninja. You know, very fit, very strong, you know, international level with most of the things that I did, and across several disciplines. I wasn't just good at one thing. I'd done the whole lot. And in a way, I was a pretty shy introvert, socially awkward, that got very easily embarrassed. That was my suit of armor. You know, if you could do this, I could do that. And therefore, I'd arrived at some level. And my own journey of mindfulness and awareness, for me, The path is awareness, learning more about self, why we do what we do, the consequences, the triggers, reframing events and language, the bigger influence of social circle and whatnot. The path for me is awareness, and the destination is a degree of inner peace, because if anything, the last few years has shown us, inner peace is probably our most valuable asset right now. The ability to sit with self and know that you're okay. And here's the thing, I think it's important to add this in, I don't want to forget it. Most of us going through stuff and worrying about the noisy monkey mind and all of our problems and suffering, you've got to realize for 95% of your life, you are completely safe. And we forget that, and we forget to remind ourselves of that. But here's the thing, your mind can only wander off when you're actually completely safe. So you've done a Tough Mudder, have you, Mark?
Yeah, a few, yeah.
Are you worrying about ex-relationships then, or whether or not you sent that email to so-and-so?
Nope.
No, you are in the moment because it demands your full attention. And here's the thing, most of our suffering comes from actually doing a lot of nothing, because then the mind has the freedom to run and explore and dig up the past and worry about the future. Why? Because we're in such a good place, we've actually got, the luxury of creating problems. Isn't that an eye-opener?
It's a very, I find it's a difficult question for a lot of people to answer, which is why I ask it.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask, I don't even think I can answer it that well. And if I did answer it, I think I could probably give you a different answer every week, because it changes.
We do change. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point, because someone sits and listens to this and they hear us chewing the fat and going back and forth over certain things. But what if they sit and say to themselves, well, who am I? Like, I'm a teacher, I'm a plumber, I'm a mechanic. No, that's what you do. Who are you? Like, what do you stand for? Like, what's behind that that shield of what you do? Like, who actually are you? And more often than not, the answer might be, oh shit, I don't know. I don't know who I am. There must be something wrong with me because I don't know who I am. And my point is that that's absolutely fine, because you don't have to know who you are right now. You just because you can move on to my next question, which is, what is the meaning of life? And I've put this in a way so that I think it might help people to build it up, to reverse engineer it. But there's also some people will know exactly who they are, and some people, probably most people, absolutely won't.
No, if they haven't gone there,
it doesn't
they
fucking
don't know.
matter.
Yeah, and it's an important thing. So if we go for question 1.5, if I may,
yeah,
to answer that, who am I? Actually, Alan Watts pops up on the next one. What's the meaning of life? He's got a perfect explanation for that. He also said, who are you? As in, the student goes to the monastery or the Zen monk and is banging on the door, and the master says, "Go away. I've got nothing to teach." He's banging on the door, and he's certain now that if you've got nothing to teach, then that must be the real deal. That's the good stuff. Yeah. So he sits out there for kind of 2 weeks. They feed him some rice under the door, and they eventually let him in. His persistence has paid off, and he walks in, and there's all these students. And he said, "Well, if you've got nothing to teach, what are these students doing?" And he said, "Oh, nothing. They're just stupid. Don't know why they're here. Just." And then he says, "Who are you? But tell me without words." And all of a sudden, the student is completely stumped. Who are you, but tell me without words? He said, that's the thing to work out, because you are not how you describe yourself. You are not your labels. You are not your experiences. You are not your expectations or your past or your future. You are a continuous now unfolding, having a human experience. And to go on to the meaning of life. So your question, what's the meaning of life? So the current answer is whatever you want it to be. And while that may seem like avoidance, there's a deeper meaning that really empowers people, because they get to choose. So this is how much power you have when you realize it's your existence and you are the screenwriter and director. So as I said, Alan Watts mentioned, the goal of life is simply to be alive. So think of it. The goal of life is to be alive. Therefore, for those of you that can listen to or see this podcast, you've won. You've won the game. You are alive as a sentient, breathing, living being. Anything beyond that is a bonus and down to whatever you want to do with your time here. To take that a little bit further, I'd say that awareness is the most important journey you can go on, with a goal of a deep acceptance of yourself and eventually arriving at inner peace. There's no war inside with who you were or think you need to be, and there's no war outside as you react and worry about people and stuff that keeps you from the beauty of this moment and your existence. That's the meaning of life.
Do you think, or do you observe?
But it's not much I used to.
Do you think, therefore, you are?
I think, therefore, I am. Yeah. And there's a wonderful play on that. I think, therefore, I think.
Jesus Christ! Now we're getting some smoke and mirrors up. But do you think that with that, the meaning of life is to be alive, and then that echoes the contentness and the happiness that we've already discussed about just being here and being able to do stuff? That's the whole purpose. And then how much of that do you think gets lost by, like, you need to be successful, you need to be a CEO, you need to be an entrepreneur, you need to have a Lamborghini, you need to have a big house and a porn star wife? That's, oh shit, I haven't got those things.
I haven't got this yet. Yeah.
Having stuff rather than.
I'm a visual kinesthetic. I'm a big picture. I'm big picture, small detail. I'm all over the place. There's literally it's like Iron Man, with all the tabs bomb. That's how I work. Yeah. There's probably some ADHD in there, if I'm honest. I'll do a test one day. But that's how my brain works. I'm a visual kinesthetic. And if I'm honest, Mark, for me, that meaning of life, as in to be alive, that grounds you, because to actually wake up in the morning and be grateful for another day on this planet, it's very easy to forget how valuable that is when the conversation didn't go right with your partner, or your boss said something, or you were 5 minutes late for XYZ, or they sold out of your favorite sandwich at Tesco, or the coffee was cold. So for me, that really grounds me with gratitude, because here's the thing, you can't accelerate and brake. And when you do focus on gratitude and you realize that your life is a very precious gift. Ask anyone in the graveyard if you don't believe me. Whatever you've got going on right now, they would jump in your shoes without even reading your sheet. They don't care what you've got, what illness, what struggle, what suffering. For another day on this planet, they would jump in your shoes like a click. And I think it's very easy for us to overlook just how valuable this gift is when we focus on big, small, or medium problems and believe that they're going to overwhelm us, we can't deal with them, that we're not good enough. For me, that meaning, that being, that having won the game, it's, in a way, it's not needing to look outside of yourself for validation, which perfectly explains the points you raised. The car, think about it, the car's irrelevant. None of the stuff you've got you can take with you, and I think I read somewhere, everything you've got has got a piece of you. So we can be so fragmented and scattered, not just at an identity level, but also at an energy level, not in a kind of woo sense, but you've got finite resources. And think of it as multiple tabs open. If you've got so much stuff going on, you can get lost in that. I'm a big fan of the minimalist. We don't need a huge house. We can't even keep the one we got clean. We don't need a huge house. We don't need super. If you love the car, do a track day. Why? Because you wreck someone else's and they repair it. You can't speed, you get fined. This is what I don't get with people. Look at why you want to do the things and believe you should have all the shiny stuff. And when it is reflective of the approval of others outside, and then you realize that it's actually got nothing about you. You want to hang, it's like Machiavelli's The Prince, Wonderful book. In fact, I'd probably read that again if I'm honest. They used to dole up criminals with gold to embarrass them so that people never stole. The irony of completely reversing this thing, you know, so the worse you were, the more gold you had on, and they'd laugh, oh, look at this terrible person. And then no one ever wanted that. Because I think you can identify so much with external things that that's probably the worst thing you can do if you're already not at peace with yourself and you've never wandered into that realm of, you know, the proverbial question, who am I? What do I want? Why do I do what I do? You know, I've got this, the dash, as you mentioned on the further question, your time here, unless you've got some kind of goal or script rolling as to signposts on that road to keep you moving in a certain direction, it is absolutely possible to wing it for 50 or 60 years and end up in a home rocking on a chair and sit there with a ton of regret thinking, what the fuck did I do with that time? Where's it gone? Where's it? What? You don't get to insert coin and have another go.
No,
You
my last two guests have both made the same point. Shari a couple of weeks ago, and then Sophie the week before that, where they both separately, without hearing each other say it, had said, if the day I died, I was able to meet the version of me that I could have been, I would be mortified if I was dying with too much left in the tank, stuff that I could have done that I didn't, stuff that I should have done that I didn't bother, things that I might have cured cancer or whatever it was. It might have been something different. I might have spent more time with my kids. Anything it is, like, it should be. And I was like, it resonates with me so much that. And touching on another thing you said about just waking up tomorrow, like,
it's a gift.
Fuck me, yeah. Since having children, I mean, in the last, I've now got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old because she had her birthday 3 or 4 days ago. So I've got 2 very young children, and somewhere in between the 2 of them, my sister's husband died of COVID at 31 years old with a 6-year-old son and a 13-year-old stepson, and like, my sister's 36-year-old widow, or however old she was. Like, fuck me, if I can't now be glad that I wake up, and I genuinely do. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, fuck me, I've woken up. I'm like, because it scares me shitless. That I might not, and what would happen if I didn't. And fuck me, the impact that has on whether I've paid my phone bill yet or not, or whether I'm going to be late to that Teams meeting or not, or whether I've replied to that email or not. I'm like, doesn't fucking matter.
So you know what? Here's the thing. I think that you only really get to experience that when the shit's hit the fan and it's big enough to knock you over. My journey, I didn't get the resiliency that I didn't even know I needed until I was in the arena having rocks thrown at my head and getting knocked the fuck out and literally saying to myself, I've got no fight left. I sat there, Mark, literally, you know, someone had done martial arts for 26 years. I said, I've got no fight left. There's nothing left. And it didn't even scare me. That was the painful thing. It didn't even scare me. But that humility and that honesty was then what turned it around, because as you just said, when the big stuff hits, you realize that waking up in the morning that's pretty much the best thing that can happen.
It's
millions of people didn't wake up today. They got a funeral next week.
Yeah,
you're still here. Isn't that whatever you've got, depression and anxiety and addiction, guess what? Unless you've got a headstone 6 feet over your fucking head, you can turn it around. It may take time, it may take people, it may take suffering, but you can turn it around, guaranteed.
Yeah, and it might not be
got to remember.
It might not be pleasant and it might not be easy, but nothing that's worth having comes easy, does it?
Choose your hard. choose your hard. You know, sitting there 10 stone overweight and miserable and worrying about how people are looking at you and feeling embarrassed and going baggy clothes, that's tough. Joining the gym and being looked at and thinking people are talking about you and not knowing what you're doing and winging it and having a program, and that's tough. But you've got 2 lines there. Where do they go? One of them never gets better, it gets worse. And the other one is a chance to change the whole fucking show. What would you bet on? Bet on yourself. That's the best investment you can ever make. And here's the thing, unless you are literally dead, there are no excuses for taking some step of action. You may need to get an expert in that fills in the gaps where you don't know. What's stopping you? Make the phone call, see the person. When your lights come on, you take your car to the garage. About time we serviced us, isn't it? That's it.
Absolutely, yeah. And like the old mañana, just wait for tomorrow. But for so many people, it doesn't come.
I was guilty of that. I mean, wind the clock back years ago, you'd have a delivery come in and I'd sit at home all day and wouldn't do stuff in case the door went. And I look at that now, I think, what an idiot. But that is how things were. And I've learned, and I think I don't do it now because by doing it, I've learned the lesson. And here's the thing, even if the lesson is painful, it's a chapter in your book, and they're not all supposed to be good chapters. Some of them are powerful and painful lessons. But it's the path you are wandering, and the less you try to escape it and the more you accept it and ask, you know, beyond the tears and the frustration and the hammer that you want to smash shit up with, beyond all of that, when you ask, okay, what can I learn from this? How does it grow and evolve me as a person? What am I missing that would potentially allow me to have less impact and do less damage to self and other? And when you can operate at that level, it's a few layers down from our surface sniping people that are wrong on TikTok and stuff like that. When you can operate at that level, you realize that most of our suffering comes from the way we see and interpret stuff and thinking. Going back to the fact that 95% of your life, you're completely safe and probably at peace in a good place, you know, short of earthquakes and houses falling down or, you know, whatever, World War III. Most of the time, you know, we've even terraformed cities to remove natural threats. So we are victims of a mind that for a lifetime was literally what's going to go wrong, to having no natural threat. And this is in Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens. You know, the lion knows it's the king of the jungle. It's been there for 2 million years. And all of a sudden, nomadic hunter-gatherers that were, you know, could have been eaten by anything in a pack or a little bit tasty, and then the victims of flash floods and strange weather, you know, catastrophes, and your other tribe that didn't say, "Hi Dave, how you doing?" They would literally nick you for resources, you know, kill the men, take the women, take the food. We don't have that. Most of us are safe. Most of our existence. You have bad days. You've got whatever you bring to this moment, but most of the time you're safe. How many times do you tell your brain that? How many times do you sit down and go, right now I am completely safe and I'm grateful. I've got a brain that's a radar that's looking for problems, but I'm safe and I get that and I appreciate that and I'm grateful because the brain's looking out for me and it's doing a wonderful job. And I'm safe, and my mind wanders off and it pulls up stuff that causes pain, but I'm safe. I'm in a good place. And then from there you allow yourself to do the work, because most people never really, let me just bring this right down to the foundations. If I say I'm going to improve my physical health, all of a sudden you see treadmills and parks and gyms and weights and kettlebells and tennis and martial arts and gymnastics, and I'm going to improve my mental health. Bang, is it a blank canvas, isn't it? Obviously, you know more than the average person on this, but mental health by definition means there's something wrong with you. 20 years ago, mental health, you're the crazy guy. But now, mental health, you can actively work on it the same as you work on your physical health. You go to the gym for exercise, you can work inner size. Mindfulness, meditation, journaling, learning to sit with your inner weather and not wanting to change it because you hate it and it shouldn't be there. That is the quickest way to have two versions of you that you're trying to get rid of, and you've got to get rid of this one and present this one, and you're at war, and you'll never show up authentic if you're at war with yourself. And that for me is the whole point of this lesson, to let people exhale fully to the junk that they have carried through life, believing that they have to be like this and look like this and do this, and that's not you, that's Johnny, and we don't behave like that, and that's other people, and you're supposed to do this. All these bits of jigsaw that form the map of us, burn it. But don't burn it and blame and hate people, because you've got to realize they did the best with what they were given, and it's been handed down throughout generations. Mark, my biggest purpose is to be the last point that my generational trauma gets handed down. Simple as that. To be the both my grandparents were active in World War II. Now you think about that.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen the movies. Active in a war where people were dying every second.
And their grandparents were fucking savages. You had to be to survive.
You had to be. Yeah. And now we've got a very, very different culture. And I know I'm not one to judge a generation. I think that the inner work is probably more important now than it's ever been, because of how rapid we consume info. Throwaway relationships, the fact that we can launch a bomb and forget that that's actually a sentient being on the other side of that screen. There are consequences. And more importantly, that we are simply not wired to have 8,000 friends across 20 platforms, that 99.5% of them we don't know anything about and have never met and are never likely to. So yeah, probably a few bits to take stock there as we come to your next question.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, I mean, on to summarize, a lot of the bits you were talking about there. I first worked in professional sport in 2007. Like top flight. I'm talking like England cricketers and professional Super League, Rugby League players, and then Premiership footballers, all 2007, 2008. Yeah. And there was a saying that I picked up through my mentor, who worked at all of those clubs and took me with him as an intern and then an employee. Yeah. And professional sport is ruthless. It's all about winning. It's a business these days, winning, and the second place is the first loser, blah 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 blah, and all that bollocks. And there was a saying that I picked up that was, you never lose, you either win or you learn. Yeah. And I was like, fucking hell.
Isn't that a game changer?
Yeah, both like vocationally in work. Of course it is. So when I've played I've played recreational sport all my life, and I've played in teams where you win 18 out of 18 matches in a season. And you just get used to winning every single week. But then when you're at an elite level, you take the greatest team ever, whether it's the All Blacks in rugby, whether it's Manchester City in football at the minute, or whoever. Name any team in any sport. They don't win every week. They might go on runs where they win a few in a row, but they still lose. So if whenever they lost, they're like, oh, we might as well all fucking retire now. We've just lost. We must be shit. It doesn't work like that. When you at the upper echelons of any industry, it's impossible to win. So you can't slash the other three tires just because you've got a puncture in one when something crops up that isn't a win, a victory. And then the big thing for me was when I then transferred that to life. I'm like, fuck me, what if I translate that to driving, shopping, chatting with my mates, or speaking to the missus, or with debates with my parents? It's like, fuck me, like, you don't have to win. You can just fucking learn, and you can, or something can go against the plan, and rather than sulking about it, you can think of a new fucking plan.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, plan D is 10 times better than the plan A that I had in place. And if I hadn't have fucked it up, and if I hadn't have learned from it and tried B and C, I never would have stumbled across this thing that is now even better than the thing that I thought I wanted. And it's like, it's helped me so much with the tiny little things that could have derailed my day, my minute, my hour. But instead, I'm like, well, I just think of another plan.
Yeah, I can really resonate with that. My confidence got hit in a big way because obviously with the events that stacked up, my own health, long COVID, losing your vision, most of my clients, well, all my clients disappeared on second lockdown. You know, obviously they're now worried about their job and their business and their house and stuff like that. Boom, I didn't have a client for the best part of 9 months, so my confidence took a huge bash. And then I realised something, echoing what you just said. And a plane appeared for a good reason. I thought, oh, let me add this in. Mark will like this, and it's perfect you mentioned it because now we arrive at the plane. So your plane's got autopilot where it self-writes. How much of a plane's journey is wrong?
God knows.
98%.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's almost constantly in error and recalibrating to get back on course, like non-stop recalibration. So 98% of the time they're wrong, give or take. That, I mean, that it may change, it might be different. Now this was years ago, and that's the statistic that I found. So almost all the time they're wrong. Now here's the thing: when we don't show up and let the terror and the doubt and the judgment win, nothing changes, but you actually regress and get worse. And I've had to, I mean, I'm not preaching to the crowd here. I am owning this at the level of existence because I was guilty of it. I hid away. I couldn't be bothered with social media. It was exhausting. And then I spent 2 months creating Bump, the old program behind you, which once my eye is better and all that, I'll be launching early next year, second Monday in January, which is the 9th, I think, if people let the hangovers pass. That's my program, Train and Brain, physical fitness and mental well-being, and that will be driven, ironically enough, by 2 big engines, one of which is a podcast and the other one's a YouTube channel because they're the same thing and one doesn't have video. And for me, that is jumping. That is the proverbial jump and stop overthinking and realizing that there will be mistakes. I mean, like just now, I unplugged my charge lead because when you touch the screen, your microphone picks up a hum. But I unplugged the phone lead, and because it's connected on an app as a webcam, it disappeared for 10 seconds. Guess what? The world still spins. And if that is enough for you to run away and panic, then, you know, I'd start doing some reflective work. But, you know, in the nicest way, the act of getting out of your own way, and I think that's why I mentioned a human doing instead of a being, because to be is a great thing, but to be, for me, is putting the key in and turning it. You're not going to do much stuck in neutral. Doing is where it's at. Having the courage, not the confidence, because confidence comes from doing. You know, you don't get fit and then join the gym. You don't get confident and do the thing. You start wobbly kneed and a little bit shaky and scared and realize that, you know, when you've done 10 presentations, you're no longer as terrified as you were 3 months ago. I mean, when you've spoken to a group of people, when you've fixed the thing that was wrong on your website or your blog or your email that you didn't know how to do, you know, you don't need to get confident and do a thing. Confidence comes as a function of doing the thing. Same as getting strong comes from lifting the weight. I think I call that reverse causality. It's very easy to get caught in that trap. I need to be motivated to exercise. No, you just open the door and go. You know, I need confidence to do this. No, you take a step and commit. Courage first, confidence comes after. And that for me is a game changer. And I'm glad you mentioned that. That reframe of failure. Failure is a very powerful word. I mean, I'm a massive fan of language and consequences. You know, failure for one individual. They go for a job interview, they don't get the job, you know, failed. They brush it off and they keep making phone calls. Herbert number 2, you know, their third interview, they don't get this job either, failed. That failed can become a ball and chain that you internalize as an identity.
Yeah.
That then, you know, it extends to, I'm not good enough. And then learned helplessness kicks in. Martin Seligman, 1968, Stanford University. It's all in there somewhere, Mark, I believe. But yeah, Martin Seligman came up with a wonderful theory in psychology of learned helplessness. And I advise listeners to go and look that up, because while the research was done on animals, it extends readily to humans to the extent where, let's look at fat loss. You've got someone that for the last several years, January is where it's at, and goodness me, if the 1st of January falls on a Monday, we're quids in, this is it. All the planets have aligned. 2 weeks down the line, they fall over, they've gained weight, lost it, gained weight, lost it. If you have attempted a thing so many times that has then fallen over, learned helplessness means that you give up on self. Simply, I can't. What's the point? Why? You learn to be helpless. It didn't work the last 17 times, so why would it now? And that's the real danger, because learned optimism is the front of that back. Change your channel. And here's what I say to people: is your language, when you speak to yourself and when you think, and what you say to others, but also what you hear from them. So that channel, are you watering more weeds than growing flowers? And I think it's very important to dig a little bit lower than that and understand that what I mean by watering weeds is we're problem focused. Oh, I hate the fact that I'm fat and I'm on these pills and I've got side effects and I haven't been healthy. And I say to a client, stop, what of that was healthy? They go, none of it. I said, that's why you're still where you are. Your channel is pain. Your channel is what I don't want. Your channel is hate. Your channel is desperate to get rid of it. None of it was what you want. All of it was what you have and don't want. And therefore, where was your focus? Where was your spotlight? Where was your energy? It was on watering the weeds that don't actually need any attention and flourish. And if you look after them, you can't get out of your house in 6 months' time, So I said, put your focus on the flowers. Put your focus, as a metaphor, put your focus on the things you want. No amount of focusing on debt teaches wealth. No amount of getting angry that you're unfit focuses on health, When you understand that and can tweak the dial and move from helplessness to optimism, to having the courage to take a first step, you become active in your own rescue when you realize you never needed rescuing in the first place. Yeah, it's that simple commitment. I'm going to do this. You leave the house, you go for a walk, you wake up a little bit early, you set your sleep and wake time for circadian rhythms. You get an app that tells you how much water you're taking on board. You make better food choices, mindful shopping. If it's not in your fridge, it can't go in your face. Simple things that don't take a PhD, that when added up, the 2 and the 3% several times is a different existence in 3 or 6 months. I don't think people realize that no one's telling you to run in your shed and build a Hadron Collider. Doing the work, which is never above you. It could be difficult. You might need an expert, but to at least get the stabilizers off where you can fly solo, none of it is beyond any of us, because we know how important exercise is. We know how important reflection and mindfulness and meditation are in terms of mental well-being and inner peace. We understand the value of sleep. We understand the importance of good nutrition and hydration. And yet it's so easy to la and put it off and deal with it later. When you pull that in and maybe offset TV time and social media and arguing online and Netflix till 2 in the morning and waking up half dead and going to work and winging it on coffee and Red Bull, when you actually make you a priority, everything begins to change. It's a ripple that lifts all boats,
And that whole thing is amplified and exacerbated by when you do look at Instagram, everyone else's life is perfect.
Yeah.
They're winning. Everything is perfect. And you're like, oh, fuck.
And we know hardly any of that is true.
I'm walking around here with a stone in my shoe. I'm not as perfect as all these people. Therefore, you can very easily see that, like say, that failure label. And then if you want to avoid that, the easiest way to do it is by not bothering.
Not showing up. And that's why so many people hide, because of, you've got obviously imposter syndrome with coaches. You've got such, I wouldn't say it's perfectionism. We can deal with that if you want later. but I would say it's certainly a few notches under it, where people believe that they have to be so good and fine-tuned and filtered and prim and proper. You know, it was terrifying. There was a girl in Starbucks when I was in Thailand, and I actually called my son over to watch her, and she was, you know, for those of you on the video, you know, take a photo and then another one, and then do the hair. And Mark, she must have taken 200 to 300 pictures.
Yeah.
To get that right shot. And you know what? I bet you she probably deleted all of them and then started again. We were literally for 10 minutes just standing there, you know, as you do, sipping your whatever. And she was taking hundreds of photos looking for that perfect shot and angle that then probably went through the filter and didn't look right and then got deleted. What these things, what these pieces of software are doing to people in terms of their self-worth and their self-esteem and the illusion of perfection. You know, when you understand that most of the people on the magazines look nothing like that in real life, they're airbrushed, they're touched up, you know, you got all the stuff to make them look great. And here's the thing, they look great for that 5-minute photo shoot, and then there's a, you know, bargain bucket KFC blowout afterwards because they've starved themselves for 2 weeks. You know, when you understand how it works, you stop reaching for the ideal that not only do you believe you need to achieve because someone else has presented it, but that completely negates the version of you that's here now. And that's the big problem for a lot of people. They want happiness. Yeah. What's going on? What do you want? I just want to be happy. Okay. As you know, language and dig in. So get your hat on. Let's go down a few levels. If you want happiness, what do you confirm beyond any doubt that you don't have? Happiness. Because you never look for something you've already got. For you to make the statement, I want happiness, is to confirm you lack it and to spend the rest of your life not only believing you are unhappy or miserable, but that at one point in the future, you are going to do a thing or find a person or have an experience that's going to fix this void and make you whole and complete. And it is never, ever going to happen because it doesn't work like that. And what I would say there is, we mentioned the peak and trough. To me, happiness is situation specific and experiential. You know, no disrespect, mate. Am I sitting there now brimming like a Cheshire cat happy? Probably not. I'm at peace, I'm in a good place, and I'm enjoying this. I'm not elated as I would be if I was at a fairground on roller coasters or, you know, taking the bike through the forest. There's different levels there, and I think the real danger is by chasing happiness. Let's take it to its extreme. If everyone was happy all the time, it would be a new normal, a new baseline, and we'd look for the next thing because everyone was boring. Yeah. So the thing is, instead of chasing happiness, which is often outside, it's an inner feeling, but it's often attached to outside stuff, which is why we keep buying crap on Amazon. Change that to inner peace. Because inner peace raises your base level of joy across situations. You're more aware. You allow yourself to stand there and literally watch a few leaves falling or the clouds passing or a few birds flying across. And that stems back from that gratitude of being alive, rather than, you know, you don't have a McLaren in the front drive or an 8-bedroom house that you can only heat 1 bedroom, you know, with a gas bill and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I think my advice to anyone is to really sit with so much of what you believe is true and valuable and what you want, and I can guarantee you so much of that will fall away when you accept that the version of you now is good enough and always was. And that ties on to your last question. So
it does indeed, mate. It does. On that note, I remember doing I spoke on stage, probably it must have been 2020, I think, probably just before lockdowns existed, and my tagline for my talk was that everything I'm about to tell you is based on 15 years of fitness frolics, failures, and fuck ups. I think how I phrased it. So a bit of alliteration with all the F's. And it was a warts and all version of this is how to be a good personal trainer, speaking to a room full of personal trainers at a national conference, and not just giving them the rose tinted glasses version of like, listen, it's okay to fuck things up, it's okay to fail. if you repeatedly fail by doing the same thing, that's stupid. That's retarded. But if you fail and you learn, and you fail again and you learn again, and you fail again and you learn a bit more, that's the whole point. Like that's what it's all about. And it's kind of that's kind of my approach to work and to life. And hopefully it's something that comes across from the podcast. And I'm preaching to the converted with you, in that I think people need to embrace it a little bit more. And that ties in with the thing I said right at the very beginning about opposites. You need these conflicting, contradictory forces of failing and winning, of fucking something up and hitting the jackpot. And you can't only have one, but by acknowledging that they're both there and that they're both intrinsically linked, then you're in a good place.
Definitely. I'd say give yourself the freedom to explore and realize that it is feedback. You know, you will know nothing about the map if you sit in the middle scared of it.
And it was a massive eye-opener to me when the few years at that same time, those few years I was working for Body Power, which for those who don't know, it was a huge, massive, like, global enterprise, which culminated in over 100,000 people in the NEC once a year, celebrating all different areas of health and fitness and bodybuilding and whatnot. And I'm working behind the scenes. I was going to photo shoots. I was sitting in the background watching some of these women bending over benches, having the photographs taken that you then see in the magazine. And I could see the fucking state of them. And I mean that in the nicest way, but like, I sat there going, like, she doesn't fucking look like that picture on the magazine. There's nothing wrong with having wrinkles or cellulite or a bit of fat in your belly. There's nothing wrong with any of that.
Yeah, completely.
But she's just a normal girl. And it all
paints an image, doesn't it?
Yeah. And sort of, I sat there watching with my own eyes. I saw this photograph being taken, and now I'm looking at it on the front cover of this magazine.
Yeah, it's like,
and it's like chalk and cheese. This is a fucking,
where's she gone?
It's unbelievable. And I kind of was like, it's all bullshit.
I mean,
I get it. And as soon as I accepted that, it made everything else fall into place.
I mean, I'm a bit harsh here, but it's done with love. I had so many physique competitors come to see me when I started off with the mindset stuff. I mean, a lot of abuse from a few of them, but a lot of physique competitors, even their partners came or sent the competitor to me and then thanked me afterwards, that said it was the worst thing they'd ever done. Now, if you think about this, you're not too great physically wise, there's low self-esteem. So what am I going to do? I know the solution to that. I'm going to walk around on stage in my underwear in front of a group of people to be judged numerically by someone that knows nothing about me other than 5 minutes of how I look. And you're telling me that's a fucking self-esteem boost? It's a guillotine. It's a guillotine for a lot of people. I mean, does that make sense, mate?
No, it makes as much sense as if I've got a massive wart on the end of my knob that I'm too embarrassed to show anyone, that I go on a fucking TV show to get filmed in front of 10 million people.
There we go. And not for the first time.
No.
But yeah,
it has been removed now.
And as soon as I said that to them, they're like, why didn't you consider this? They would come away from that comp. Not all of them, but a huge, not a disproportionate. We're not talking the one or two. We're talking a huge amount, a disproportionate amount for it to be chance. Huge amount of people have done these competitions and literally came away from it traumatized and in a worse state than they entered, thinking it was going to fix so much, and it actually made them feel considerably worse. You've rocked up and you get a 6 out of 10 and you were hoping for an 8 because you put so much effort in and you've got the creosote on and your white teeth, and that's not you though. That's the thing. You're presenting an image to fit a model or an ideal or an acceptable standard to be graded. Can you see how this is just a head fuck for a lot of people?
It's crazy, isn't it? And then
we call it health. Not only do we call it health, We call it the epitome because these are the dudes and the lasses on the magazine covers.
Yeah.
It's like you, and you know, so you got men's health, you got women's health. What do you say? Oh, so that's telling me subconsciously that unless I look like that, I'm not healthy.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, even though they look good physically, for a lot of them, their boards are bare and the heating's off and the house is a mess because they put on a great shop front and a lot of them are at war with themselves.
Yeah. And health is such a multifaceted thing.
It's much bigger, isn't it?
It's physical, it's mental, but it's also emotional and hormonal. And if you put a spoke in one of those wheels, it's gonna bring a standstill to everything. Like you can't neglect one area and be world class in another without there being some kind of ramifications to it.
And that's why I focused on Train and Brain, because for a lifetime I coached physical, and then for literally the last 8 years it was 95% mental. You know, most people come to me for mindset. And I thought, well, let me combine these because everyone has a mind and a body and they interact at every single level. And just to extend what you said that related to self, you extend that to other. All of us are part of relationships and are exposed to information and have senses that pick up stuff, and we recalibrate based on that. You know, that's how we kind of keep track, homeostasis as it were. So it's not just self with our inner cogs and our inner workings. We're part of so many circles and areas that all have an impact on us throughout our days and our time here. It's big, but it's worth doing, and I can't emphasize that enough.
No, tell me about it. It's about 40 minutes ago we were talking about people being 6 foot under, and that someone who is dead would swap with any person on earth for another day. Yeah. And we kind of, I was like, oh, that's the perfect segue into question 3. But we've gone down a few rabbit holes and we've been sidetracked. So my smooth transition from one part of the conversation to another is now not quite so smooth, but fuck it. But question 3 is, how do you want to be remembered? And there's a piece of homework attached to it, which is where I ask people to produce 70 characters of text that would fit on their headstone. Now, I'm not counting, I'm not going to be adding them up. So if you go over, it doesn't matter. We can get you a bigger headstone.
I've done that. But you did miss out. What do you regret if I go in order of what you sent through the chat?
I'm doing that one next.
Oh, right. Okay.
Coming up. Don't you worry.
Do you want the headstone?
Yeah, read out your headstone text to me, and then we'll analyze it and dissect it as you then make it clear with no ambiguity how you want to be remembered.
Right. Here lies Stephen Aish. It took a lifetime to realise life is a state of mind.
Whoa. Right, so elaborate. Now, if you've got like a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs to what does that mean to you? So I've got an idea of what it means to me, but the beauty of it is that I suppose it can be interpreted
completely,
in infinite ways.
Everyone's got different channels and experiences that they bring to this moment in terms of, you know, their architecture and whatnot. For me, that is emphasizing that probably I use a great little phrase, and this ties in nicely with that bell curve, with that normal distribution. Most of the people, most of the time, and I think that's where my work sits. Most of the people, most of the time, and for most of the people, most of the time, the best thing they can do, no matter where they are, what they've gone through, what their goals are, is do the inner work on mental well-being, mindfulness, awareness, you know, whatever it looks like. There's no template of you have to get up at 5 and meditate and you got to chant and have your singing bowl and all that business. You know, don't make it a circus. Start simply with 10 minutes of sitting there alone and not needing to escape yourself because you're sure that there's something more important than being there with you. And literally whatever surfaces, when you are with it instead of the mind running off and stuff starts to pop up and surface, acknowledge it and accept it and be at peace with it. And then you're no longer at war with yourself. And when you're not at war with yourself, you don't see other people as a target. But as I mentioned, front and back, you also see that what they threw at you wasn't because they hated you. It's reflective of who they are and what they're going through. And for me, realizing that life's a state of mind is that when you do the inner work, when you heal a degree of trauma, when you realize your worth, you build up your self-esteem, you're accountable, you meet your needs, you tread softer in the hearts and minds of other people. You do less damage to self and you do less damage to other. And for me, that's a great way of traversing this planet.
Your name has been mentioned by me on this podcast.
Almost everyone.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. If you've, I don't know if you get any royalties or anything. I don't know if Spotify have.
No, I'm waiting for the 10% checks.
They sent you like 50p or something like that. Never mind. I'll get you an advent calendar for Christmas.
Chocolate. Yeah, man.
But yeah, I've name dropped you and I've used stories and analogies and points that you've raised to me, and the one that gets me that I've mentioned the most outside of this podcast to anyone who will listen is the old like life jacket or the oxygen mask in a plane. Yeah, exactly. So if you're for those who haven't heard it, I might have a few first-time listeners. Although
hopefully you do, mate.
Yeah, maybe. I think I've got 7 season ticket holders, and that's about it. But we'll see how we go. So yeah, if you're on the plane and there's an emergency, you get told categorically, put on your mask before you put on the mask of children or those around you.
Yeah.
If you're on a boat, put on your life jacket before you start going around being Mother Teresa helping everybody else. And I sort of wonder I wonder how much there's if we're talking about like peeling back layers or going deeper, like in terms of saying, right, well, if you want to protect everybody around you, that can't happen if you're dead. So you put your fucking mask on first and then preserve yourself, then you can preserve others. But if we go one step further back than that, and if we sort of cross-reference this with the inner turmoil and the inner workings of people's minds, like, well, if you're not quite ready yet to put yourself first and to preserve your own life, what about if you just stop fucking being at war with yourself first? Like, would that be the first? Would that be the first regression? So
yeah, and it's very important that you mentioned that. I mean, let me start boring a few holes there and really dig to the foundations. I ask a lot of women that were on courses, or people that their heart's on their sleeve, they do anything for anyone, but they become a doormat. I shoot from the hip. It's all delivered with compassion, but I don't mince words. I hit, and I hit hard. And I say to them, okay, who is more important, you or your children? And every single one of them, every time says, my kids, I would do anything for them. I would miss meals if they had to eat. I'd walk barefoot if they didn't have shoes. And I said, okay, consider that your unwillingness to recognize your own needs, and I've got a backstory here. I've got women that have actually referred to themselves as the fat pig in the mirror. These are people that are not happy. They are at war with themselves. They hate themselves. And then in the nicest way, I turn on that floodlight and I say, right, if you put your kids before you, what are you teaching them by hating yourself and never showing up for you? What are they learning about self-worth and love? And I said, you put you first, because that is a statement of how valuable you are. And it's right, you can't help anyone dead. And here's the thing, for a lot of people, they have been taught that everyone else is so much more important than them that they've never even been on the start list. The proverbial doormat, the proverbial yes person, the proverbial, even if I'm starving, I'm not going to ask for more. Or if I come round to your house and I'm gasping and dying of fucking thirst, I'll say no to a drink. These are the people that are so dug in and hidden in terms of even having the courage to honor their needs at a basic level. Now, that's not to judge, and that's not to shame, that's not to make you feel guilty. That is to shine the fucking light on so that you can't run away and hide from it anymore. Yes, right. So now you're listening, stay with me. When you own that, and you don't hide, and you don't get pissed off and say, oh, I don't like that guy because he made me uncomfortable. When you sit with that, and when the fucking noise and the discomfort and the pain subsides, and then there's little old you left under all the noise and the judgments and the labels and the conditions and the shame and the attachment and the guilt. And when there's little self, the odd sock in the laundry basket, that's been battered and bruised and is trying to work out which way's up. And as I said earlier, life's a bit of a mess and you're winging it. When you show up for you, your little sponges, your little cherubs that are learning from you as an important figure, an influential avatar that knows all of it because you're the parent. They are learning from you how to create a map of who they are and how to operate in the world. And I'm sorry, but if you hate you and put everyone else first, they are simply picking that up in terms of mirror neurons and empathy. And they're going to create a patchwork quilt of I'm not good enough. And this, Mark, is how that generational trauma gets handed down. And I said it stops at me. I forgave whoever gave me what I had that I dealt with over time. And I realized that instead of looking back and getting angry, that's completely the wrong way of doing it. Because most of the people, most of the time, they don't mean malice. They don't actively go out of there. Yes, there are some, but we're talking the fringes. We're talking, you know, the percentiles. Most of the people, most of the time, they have a toolbox and they use it to the best of their ability. And quite often it doesn't do the job, or it does do it, but it doesn't do it that well. None of us get through trauma-free. We don't. It simply doesn't work like that. There's been moments where you've been screamed at and messed up and made to feel tiny and embarrassed and called up in assembly. What are you doing? And 200 people are looking at you. And this is why a lot of people have terrors with public speaking. You are passing notes and there's you and there's Johnny. You two, stand up. So Mark, tell me, what's so important that it has to replace my presentation at assembly? Oh, in fact, do tell us, we're dying to know. And you've got 400 eyeballs staring at you while you want the floor to open up and swallow you. And your brain is very clever. It's forming a map. And what's going on now? Radar, bang, bang, bang. There's a big red cross. There's terror. There's elevation. You've rapidly switched over into, you know, the old nervous system of terror, fight and flight. Why? You have been asked to speak in public. And if this is how you feel when you're asked to speak in public, you will never do it again. And you will carry that with you until you are courageous enough to face it and in micro doses overcome it, which is what I had to do. I would sit at a table where people were introducing themselves, and as they got to me, I'm doing cardio to the extent where I can't even speak, dry throat, handshaking, heart doing 150. And as you know, I can now stand on a stage and talk to 100 people for all day long if I needed to. You don't rock up and switch stuff instantly. You take steps and realize that anything worth having comes gradually. And coming full circle to your lifeboat and your mask, the very fact that you are willing to put everyone else before you, as much as you think it is a wonderful act of compassion and humility and charity or whatever, empathy. If you are sinking as a result of giving, you are giving from an empty bowl and two people starve. Give from overflow, give from abundance. Get yourself in a very good place and give from the excess. Because then you'll find that you, instead of being a warning to a lot of people, I know, painful lesson, you become a lesson to a lot of people. There's the way you carry yourself, the way you interact, your confidence, your ways of expressing self, what you're interested in. You don't hide, you're not shy, you're not full of doubt, you don't keep hidden away in case people guess that you're winging it. You go through these stages and guess what? Bang, the little you that was hidden away has now started to blossom. I got 3 kids. I would do anything for them. I would literally die this second if one of them, you know, had to live and it was me or them. But here's the thing. I realize that as much as my job is to protect them, It's to prepare them for the world more than it is to protect them. And the best way I can prepare them for the world is being a positive example that has dealt with as much of my shit as I can that doesn't get handed down to them, and then burden them that at some stage later they're going to pay a counsellor good money to unpick. Does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. And before you just got to that last bit, I was going to ask you if you could summarize all of that into a few sentences about how you want to be remembered. And I think you probably started to do that in terms of how you want to prepare your children for their tomorrows and their forevers, rather than it's sort of as a relatively new parent, and this isn't something that's specific to parents only, because even if you're not a parent, it's still an important point. But it's crazy how the most natural instinct there possibly could be to protect your children could actually fucking destroy them,
do more damage.
Yeah. All right, so you give them something today, but what about in 10, 20, 30, 40 years? What legacy has that left them? What lessons has it taught? What example have you set for them in the way that you conduct yourself? And to me, that is it's a thing that I'm learning massively. But yeah, do you want to summarize on how you want to be remembered?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be remembered as someone that actually showed up, had a good go, explored as much of my own map as humanly possible, good, bad and ugly, integrating the darkness, living in a state of acceptance, pushed body to the limit, pushed mind to the limit, had a story to tell, had fun, made some friends, and hopefully brought some wonderful kids into the world that add more than they take in terms of damage. And I think the big thing there with going back to the original question with the kids and that, there's a wonderful quote from physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. He said, we've got a toddler and they'll push a cup, and instead of saying stop, don't do that, we let it fall off and smash, because it costs $1, and you clear up, it takes 30 seconds. As soon as you're no, stop, don't do that, be quiet, sit still, you are actually reducing that child's willingness to explore and expand, and that creative what's the word, that not fantasy, that state of excitement of the grand what's it all about, that exploring, that
the frolics, the failures and the fuck ups.
Exactly. And he said, as soon as you go, don't do that, there's that finger pointing. What do we say to people when we after goodbye? Be careful. What about go and have fun? Go and fuck shit up, But seriously, be careful. It's that bloody bubble wrap yourself. Don't do any stuff. Avoid all risks. Be sensible. Be boring. If you take it to its extreme, be careful. Don't do anything more than, staying inside a little bowl that you swim around in and there's never much happening. Have adventures, take risks, because at the end of the day, you bomb. That's it. You'll have people around your bed crying. Make it count. Make it, goodness me. I think unless you are literally teleported to your last day and can reflect on what you will have in that moment. This is why some people actually have cancer and then get the all clear and snap out of that illusion and go off and do something big with their life. Not working in a shoe shop for 30 years and hating it, or a factory. Not that there's wrong jobs, but if you've got real talent and you're not sharing it, as Les Brown says, live full, die empty. Don't die with your music inside you, which is what I think you mentioned earlier. Give it away. If you started off with this blast furnace, this gift, this creative whatever it was, your thing, and through whatever reason you chose employment, you chose safety after expressing that goes out, Mark. It goes down to a little flicker, and someone will say to you, "Oh, you know what? You're world class on the guitar, or you've wrote an epic set of poetry, or the outline of a novel that's really good." And what happened to that book, Steve, or that album you were going to record? Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. What about how many Steves do you know who should have played for England, had trials for Man United, or when I was 16, I used to be better than Gary Lineker, but what, Steve? What fucking went wrong? What was it? Everyone else's fault, was it? Yeah. Or as the great philosopher Mark Laws says, thank fuck it's Monday. Like,
completely, mate. And it's going to be a Monday soon, because apparently they pop round every week as regular as clockwork.
Yeah, and the way you're talking, we'll soon.
We're going to be in Monday soon, right? So can I entertain you with what do you regret?
Absolutely. I was just going to ask you if you please could.
You know, I had a big door and I put boredom over it.
Yeah.
Well, I got another big door, and as I walk up to it, there's a big sign on that door that says regret. And I reached my hand out and I went to open it, and I smiled and walked away, because I realized that opening that door would consume me and potentially lead to hundreds of failures, and all that would do is take away from now. Nothing can be changed, only accepted and forgiven once we're ready.
Very
I regret nothing, mate. I regret nothing, because to regret things is to not be at peace with what was. But there's a very insidious aspect of that. You keep it alive if you think you can go back and change it, and that has got a huge chunk of you. I look back at what used to be a Himalayas of doom. I've hurt people, people have hurt me, relationship, business, family, and it's a plane now. It's literally it's a flap. I've dealt with it. I've forgiven. And here's the thing with forgiveness. Forgiveness is an inside job. It starts with self, for expecting what didn't happen or wanting an apology that didn't arise. But the big thing that I think most people get wrong with forgiveness, and this is crucial, guys, put a finger in one ear so that this doesn't go in one and out the other. Listen, forgiveness is never about the other person. What most people see as forgiveness is, if I forgive you, you are right and I deserved it. No. Forgiveness is, you are still up on my shoulders. I'm going to put you down because you don't exist in the next chapters. Forgiveness is self-healing. That is it. And as soon as you understand that, you realize that once, and I get it's a journey. Some people have had stuff done to them that it might take you a year to forgive. You're not ready. That's understandable. When you can forgive, you realize that it is an act of self-respect, of self-worth. It's a compassionate act. It's love, because the people that you are unable to forgive still have a piece of you, still consume you. You're scattered across time. And when you can regain that and bring it all back to this moment and surrender, that's how you can be at peace with now. Because I'm not keeping all these things alive, which I regret and don't agree with and want to change. Here's the thing. If you said to anyone, and as I said, most of the people, most of the time, if you said to anyone, you get to redo any day that you don't like, we'd never fucking get past day one. Should have trained more, should have got up earlier, I didn't have enough this, I did, you know, you'd redo it. And that's the thing. Life is finite. There's enough time. Time's running out. You have got a section. It's not finite. But that's the beauty of the gift. Because it's finite, there is a sense of low-level urgency that the clock's ticking, and therefore it's probably a good idea to start getting stuff done that's important, you know?
Absolutely. So the last bit is the letter.
The letter. Oh, you're gonna love this one. Have you got a stopwatch?
I can time it if you want.
Right.
Well, is it going to be?
It's 1 minute long. About... It's exactly 1 minute long. I think you'll like this one.
Okay, fair enough.
So get it ready.
So that for those who are unaware, I ask every guest to prepare a letter. I ask them to write the letter to anyone, dead or alive, including themselves, and it can be based in the past, present, or future. And then I awkwardly ask them to read it out loud, and then we'll spend a minute or two dissecting it if need be, and then we're done. So, Steve, who's your letter to?
My letter, I've written a letter for humanity. It will give them the secrets that they long for to remove their pain and suffering, and it will take exactly 1 minute. Can you start the clock?
3, 2, 1, go.
Go. Say when.
That's 2 minutes.
That'll do us. Okay. So, my gift for you lot. Nothing was said because nothing needed to be said. After people realized there was no technical failure, they were faced with a realization that once nothing continued, they were at peace with it and accepted it. This teaches us the present is always there under the noise of expectation and distraction. It also teaches that nothing needs to be added or can be taken. You are loved, valued, enough, and complete in every way. Go enjoy your life on your terms.
The end. I might have known there would have been a catch. I should have seen that coming.
This is the thing. There would have been there's a waiting, isn't there? Like the glove's ready to catch the ball. What? And when it does, and guess what's left? You and now. The only place that I'd recommend you spend some quality time.
Well, that's what. Okay, first 3 seconds, I thought you're.
What's going on?
I was like, okay, he's composing himself and he's getting ready. Maybe this is really deep. He's stopping himself from crying or something.
It's gonna be deep.
Yeah, and then a few seconds later, I was like, I get it. I was like, your letter is whatever I need my letter to be. It's whatever I need to hear. It's about an awkward 2 minutes of complete silence and making that not an awkward thing, because rather than seeing it, if we were on broadcasting on BBC or on like a global platform, you're not allowed to have more than a couple of seconds of dead air because it's money, isn't business. It? Yeah. But in this context, it's probably exactly what people need to just.
That really was a gift for people to understand that what they were left with after they expected something was the best place to start spending a chunk of your time. At peace with now, not clinging or grasping or desiring, and realizing that the more you spend there in acceptance of what is, the more you get to know self, the more you get to heal self, the more you get to respect and understand self. That builds self-esteem and self-worth. Dare I say, a bit of confidence to do stuff creeps in, and all of a sudden you're on a new pathway. You are a different person months down. So let's say we change you. I mean, I'm passionate about astronomy. I packed the telescope away, but if you were to walk into that and knock it, it's a few inches down here and it's light years up there. So if your path has changed by 2 degrees, in 6 months' time, you're a different person with a different way of being. That's all that you can ask for. It's not a complete overhaul where it all happens at once. It's a gradual recognition of catching yourself out, of realizing options are present, of not putting your foot in your mouth, of understanding the triggers of reaction. You know them. You got the tingle and the washing machine and the pulse, and let it simmer. And understand that you can put that arrow down. You go back to hunter-gatherer. We're literally like, what's going to ruin now? And that absolutely knackers you, because you are constantly prepping for what might ruin this moment at the expense of ever fucking being there.
It's funny, isn't it? So I spend
when you see it, it just makes so much sense. But
yeah,
we're caught up in it so much so that we don't even know that we are spectators to our own movie, hoping it has a good ending.
Yeah. When you, whether you look at, say, like, I don't know, your beer gut or a receding hairline, how many grey hairs you've got, when you look in the mirror every day, it never changes. It's exactly the same as it was yesterday, and it's exactly the same as it will be tomorrow. So if you're sort of like thinking, well, I need to make some changes in my life, whether that's work, relationships, personal, whatever it is, and you go, oh, what's the point? I'm making such a pathetic little attempt. It's going to be exactly the same tomorrow. It's not going to change anything. Go, yeah, but just that tiny little 1 degree of change,
small
dose. Where are you going to end up in 6, 12, 24 months?
100%. And that's what people don't realize. It's small doses over time. How did I get good at taekwondo? I went to classes regularly for years. How did I get good at weightlifting? I done weightlifting on a regular basis for years, kettlebells, grip. I done it. People say, Steve, how do you do half the shit you do? It's because I spent 20 years doing it. You'd expect to be pretty good if you were passionate about it and therefore put the work in. But this doesn't need that level. Where can I actively change one area and improve it by 5 or 10%? And then stack that up over time and realize that, not 21 days, that's not habit. Read James Clear's Atomic Habits, wonderful book that reframes it more to a system than goals. It's 60 days, it's 2 months. Don't think you've gone to the gym 3 times and that's it, I'm done. When you've done it for 2 months, and instead of being a robot thinking I missed a session, I failed, I need to start again, or my meal plan went wrong, I've got to start again. One blimp doesn't cancel it unless you cancel it, and that's the thing. If you miss a session, this is what just to add, I think this is important for people with goals. I had a client that wanted to get 7,000 steps in and he'd done 5, and I said, and he's disappointed, and I said, you're focused on the 2 you didn't do at the expense of the 5 you did. It's like, dumb, penny dropped. So if you wanted to lose 10 kilos in X amount and you only lost 8, are you disappointed and angry, and is that a failure? Or are you so close that in another month or so you'll have done it? It just took a little bit longer. And when you give yourself that flexibility of reframing and literally changing the meaning of what you did that was good, rather than writing it all off because the whole thing wasn't achieved, that is a total game changer for people that do have a blip and then throw the whole lot in the bin. They'll start exercising, they'll miss a gym session, they'll quit. They'll do 3 weeks of decent nutrition and they'll have a weekend blowout and they'll quit, and it's a new diet or a new coach or a new thing. It's realize a 70% rule that has a few bumps in the road will always be going from lost at sea to the illusion of perfection, that then when it falls over, you write yourself off and start again, because you are adding in another nail in the coffin of learned helplessness. And if you get enough strikes there, before you know it, you quit on yourself and you don't even care that you've quit on yourself. And if those of you that are now nodding and knowing, you know what, that's me, there's not a headstone above you, you've still got time. Good luck.
Patience and persistence.
And any other P you can throw in there to change it from F.
Well, you say that I had to have my P.
I was going to say we've done a good closing into.
We're way beyond my P threshold, so luckily I had a spare glass. But yeah, patience and persistence, which is the complete antithesis to everything that you're going to see and hear in social media, mainstream media, get rich quick, 7-day, 30-day, 10-day, do these 3 exercises that will change your life forever, and largely all bollocks.
You know what, that is so true, and I think it's important just to expand that a little bit. Look at anything that you've got that is worth having, that you've worked hard for. So, you know, like my black belt, my degree, I was an electrician as a trade. It took 4 years. So why the fuck do we think that we're going to fix our health in 2 weeks, or our business is just one funnel away? You know, anything worth having takes time and effort, as in adaptation and upscaling as you learn, as you fill in the gaps of the skills that you don't currently have. So if it takes years to get a degree in a trade and learn an instrument and you know, a language, and why are we then with something as important as health thinking that with just a little ebook or whatever we're there? You know, at least give yourself a fighting chance. Do the effort on a regular basis, or as regular as you can manage. And if you showed up half the time with reasonable effort, in 6 months' time, you'd have gone bang. That's the difference. Don't think of 2 or 3 weeks, think of 6 months.
You think as well of, and there's hundreds and hundreds of examples like this, but Van Gogh didn't sell a single painting while he was alive.
Very true.
Failure. Colonel Sanders, I think, was in his 70s before KFC emerged. Like, what a fuck up. I do even believe, I won't quote a number because I'll get it wrong, but Stephen King, I'm sure, had written something like 50, 60, 70 books or scripts, and every single one was thrown in the bin, or his the attempt at taking them to publishers. No, sorry, it wasn't. It was 50, 60, 70 publishers that he had given his book to. All of them rejected it, and I think it was his wife that took it out the bin and sent it to one more that then became like one of the greatest sort of writers of any genre that we've had, who wrote The Shawshank Redemption, which is your favourite film.
I think it was the same with Mickey Mouse, wasn't it? Disney, literally went
Disney 100 as well.
200 places. And here's the thing, I use a good story for that. I mean, Edison, what, 10,000 attempts to get the tungsten filament for the bulb? There's a great quote by Carl Jung. He says, there's no error in realizing what a thing isn't, i.e. a false positive. When I understand what it isn't, I'm a step closer to knowing what it is. So you know that little game where you got the plastic cup and you got the red squidgy ball? Yeah. And they put it there and they put it over the cup, and there's 100 cups on the table. And you lift the first one and you go, I'm a failure. You've just improved your probability.
Yeah.
So not got it, not bang. That is persistence. That's consistency. That's showing up. Where in life does anything work? And let's touch on perfectionism. Where in life does anything work perfectly the first time you do it? None, short of a fluke, you know, hole in one or a bullseye, which does happen. But for most of us, there's a learning curve of adaptation, a skill set in terms of motor control, you know, as you know. So why do we expect it in other areas? Oh, I should have this. I should be great. I should be an expert. I should be perfect. Perfectionism is killing people. Change that to good enough, which is way above average, say 70%. I say 8. If you are a train wreck in the nicest way, you know, if life is, you know, if literally you are a medical explosion waiting to happen, I say to people 80%, you know, if I want 80% here, make the effort. For everyone else, drop it to 70. Have flexibility. You're not a robot. You don't have to have your emotions surgically removed. Show up most of the time and do the work as a commitment to self. And then bang, you know, you'll see incredible difference, because anything you've got took time. This is no different, but probably more important. You know, you're not going to drop dead if you can't play Chopin. But trust me, if you're wandering around, you know, multiple stones overweight and miserable and your head's all over the place, I'd say that's actually worth addressing. You know?
Absolutely, mate. And if there's, I was going to say, if someone's listened to this and not taken
all the way through,
well, to be fair, yeah, well, like 2.5 hours, they'll be doing well.
If they're still conscious.
Yeah, they could have watched Shawshank Redemption in the same time. But mate, there's just bucket loads of continuous useful snippets and insights and I don't know, helpful. There's so much value in there that I think will help people to hear from, like the Jedi Yoda to whom which I refer on a regular basis.
Straight now.
Yeah, the Cyclops.
Yeah, it's going there. Apparently, it'll take between 1 and 4 months to fully. I mean, when the wife was driving me home, I was closing the good eye, and I went, I can read the car number plate. That's how bad it got. I couldn't read the number plate. I mean, it's just like 6 of them overlapped. So with the mouse, there's 2. There's one above the other, but it takes a while to settle. But what I noticed is it's instantly better. You know, the dizziness is gone. I'm not bumping into stuff. It's literally like I've been given a second chance. And you think that's just an eye, you know. Oh. Yeah, no, I'm good. Absolute pleasure. As you know, mate, I'm more than happy to share the knowledge. My goal is simple. For one person to listen to this and have the courage to go, do you know what? As much as it hurt, that's me. And I'm going to do something about it. That for me, and I don't even need to know about it. Yeah. But you know, you've delivered. You know, you've walked up to someone's door and said, there's some goodness, make of it what you will. For them to actually take that and act upon it, it's going to change their life.
Yeah, and I listen to all of these shows back because I try to, when I'm part of the conversation as a participant, I then like to sort of listen to it again as a third party, as a pervert watching
easy to miss stuff,
or something. Well, exactly. Yeah, you can get too involved slightly. But I'm definitely looking forward to listening back and getting even more from it. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your effort in all of the shenanigans that I'd asked you, the hoops I'd asked you to jump through.
Absolutely. I thought I'd do that a little bit different to most other people.
But well, that's the whole point of this whole thing is that I ask the same 4 questions. Like you're supposed to really have, like, I don't know, different 20 questions for every single person you ever interview. So Steve, like, where did you grow up? Like, what did you blah blah blah, all that bollocks. And I'm like, well, 4 questions. Everyone answers the same 4 questions, but do you know what? They do it in very, very, very different ways. And if that doesn't help you to lay the foundations to say, I don't have to be like Steve and Mark and Gary and Bob and Sue, and I don't have to have the same thoughts or opinions or values as them. But what I can do is I can just sort of work back and figure out who I am and what I stand for and what I believe in. How do I want to be remembered? And it doesn't have to be like everyone else's. If anything, it has to not be like everyone else's, because
it's okay being you.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, on that note, I'm going to hang up on you. I'm going to let you crack on with your life. I'm going to go and have another piss, and I'll look forward to listening back. So thank you very much, Steve. As always, I'll speak to you soon.
Pleasure, mate. Take care and enjoy your afternoon.
I will do. Cheers, Steve. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening. I could speak to Stephen for hours. Well, I just did, but literally there's so many rabbit holes and so many tangents you can go off that provide so much value and insight into what's going on in the old computer upstairs. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. Please tell someone about it if you think they might enjoy it, like, even if they think they can't spare 2.5 hours, but 5 30-minute chunks, it'll be quite easy to do. As this is going out on Remembrance Sunday, I thought I would just finish with a poem for the fallen by Robert Lawrence Binion. With proud thanksgiving, a mother for her children, England mourns for her dead across the sea.
Flesh of her flesh they were, spirit of her spirit, fallen in the cause of the free. Solemn the drum's thrill, death august and royal, sings sorrow up into immortal spheres. There is music in the midst of desolation, and a glory that shines upon our tears. They went with songs to the battle, they were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted, they fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. They mingle not with their laughing comrades again, they sit no more at familiar tables of home. They have no lot in our labour of the daytime, they sleep beyond England's foam. But where our desires are and our hopes profound, felt as a well-spring that is hidden from sight, to the innermost heart of their own land they are known, as the stars are known to the night. As the stars that shall be bright when we are dust, moving in marches upon the heavenly plain, as the stars that are starry in the time of our darkness, to the end they remain. And only one fuck up in my recital of that. Anyway, if it wasn't for those that went before us and for the savagery that they lived through, then we would have a hell of a lot more reasons to not appreciate waking up every morning. But for the time being, no matter what we're going through, it could be a lot worse, and thank fuck it's Monday.